So several podcasts ago, we talked about how the security lines at airports, they really need big signs, big pictographs indicating what people should do. I flew out of Heathrow and I'm getting through the security, but the sign says, take out your laptops. It's the only thing they indicate that you're supposed to take out. And as you know, the thing that irritates me most is how this comes to iPads. I had the most frustrating iPad experience. So, okay, laptops out. We get to the front of the line. And the lady then tells us, oh, you need to take out your iPads. Okay, great. So now my wife and I are digging through our bags for our iPads. We take the iPads out. And then she looks at us and says, but not iPad minis. After we had taken them out. And so she goes, those have to go back in your bag. Like, are you freaking kidding me? So you have to put it back in the bag. And this is the kind of thing that I just like, I don't even think that was a real rule. I think this is just something that she was thinking, because I swear every time I go through Heathrow, it's different about the iPads. I think
no, not 64 gig minis, only 32 gig.
I was like, are you serious? Like, this can't possibly be the rule. Right? Show me somewhere at Heathrow where someone said, oh, you know what we should do? iPads out, but not iPad minis. It can't be true. I refuse to believe that is true.
Well, that's just probably just a size in inches, where there's a threshold somewhere, and the mini and the normal iPad strand that threshold.
Yeah, I would believe that if it wasn't different every single time I go through Heathrow. I think it's just whatever the person happens to think it is. It's like
it's the
rumors.
Same with shoes. Shoes are like that too. Yeah. Those shoes you have to take off, but those ones you don't.
Right. And oh god, so it's just infuriating. And then so when we're flying out of Las Vegas, when we're coming back, it's the exact reverse. Oh god, the Las Vegas airport was the worst. But we're flying out and we take out our iPads now in advance. And at Las Vegas, they go, oh, please put those back in your bag. Don't take iPads out, just laptops. It's like, god damn it! Like, you know how you could fix this? You could fix it with a sign right there that shows you a picture of what comes out of the bag. But no airport does this.
Gray, do you know what? You're right, and it would help you. But as I have said before, people in airports are morons. And you could punch them in the face and tell them that they have to get their laptop out.
Okay.
And they would still get to the front of the line and go, I didn't know about the laptops.
But listen. Surely the TSA agents, the security agents, want the big signs there, because I'm so aware of how on the line the agents still have to address each person individually for the stuff that they just don't know, and they can't possibly know because there's no indication anywhere of what it's supposed to be. And okay, so flying out of Las Vegas was like an amazing experience with the security lines. Like, I can't believe how incompetently this is set up. It's McCarran, I think, is the name of the airport, but whatever. It's the big Las Vegas one. So we get to the airport. And because I'm already now riled up from our flight out of Heathrow, like, oh, security lines, they're terrible. So now I'm looking around and paying attention to how this is going to work at Las Vegas. Not a one sign anywhere. No signs, no indication of shoes, belts, laptops, anything. All they have is a video that's playing above the place where you're supposed to queue. Now, let me tell you how much I hate these videos at airports. Because there's so little information that needs to be conveyed, right? Shoes, belts, iPads, laptops, jackets. They're like 5 pieces of information. But they'll manage to stretch it out in a video that takes 5 minutes and is trying to be funny, showing funny situations of people like, oh, look at this idiot doing it wrong. Do. The videos take forever. But at Las Vegas, the thing that I thought was great was, we arrived there. And we happened to arrive at a time when there was basically no security line, so we could get right to the front we could get right to where we're supposed to do the bags. But we went so quickly, I couldn't even have watched the video if I wanted to. So I thought, this is like an amazing self-correcting system. If there's no line here, because people get to the front, they can't have possibly watched the video they were supposed to watch. Now they have no idea what to do, and suddenly it takes longer. It's like the system is designed to make sure there will always be a line, because if it gets too short, the people at the front don't know what to do, and now it's going to take longer so that the people at the back can then have time to watch the video. It's like it's guaranteed to make sure there's always going to be a line. It's just infuriating. Like, just a sign. Just put up a sign. That's all I want. Just a sign.
The two things that of the last sort of week or so that I've spent a lot of time with is airports, and also I've spent a lot of time, more than I usually do, around some young children. And I've noticed something, because to me, something I've realized about childhood is basically it is just like children are really selfish, and growing up is kind of a gradual process of becoming less selfish with a few little ups and downs along the way. But when you think about it, for example, like, there's nothing more selfish than a baby, is there? A baby feels a mild inconvenience, mild pang of hunger, and it just starts screaming and screaming until it gets fed.
Right.
And then younger kids, little kids are quite selfish, and then you get a bit older and you start learning a few manners, but they're still pretty selfish, really, and they do some pretty, because they're still learning. I understand they're learning. And you get older and you learn manners and you learn, other people have to have a turn. And then you become a grown-up.
What I think it is that the baby is basically like a little monkey when it's born. And the process of growing up is the process of building layers of self-control on top of what is basically your monkey brain in the center of things.
Yeah.
And your monkey brain is always screaming about whatever the hell it wants at the top of its lungs. But if you're grown up, you have many, many layers to try to keep this under control.
Okay.
But like that's everybody still has that, like at their absolute core.
What I think happens is when humans set foot in an airport, they become monkeys again.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just become completely selfish, and like everything is about getting on the plane first, for example, which is completely pointless because you're all going to arrive at the other end and get off in the order you have to get off in at the other end anyway. But people become just ruthless about getting on the plane first or getting this and getting that. They become very...
I'm going to disagree with you about getting on the plane simply because there is very often not enough space for the bags. So it does matter about getting ahead first.
Okay. Well, they're still being super selfish. Because they become ruthless about it. They become ruthless like you wouldn't else. Yeah, okay. I'm with you.
I agree with you, but they are put in a situation that anyone would do this. Right.
Fair enough. It's never been a problem, but I accept that. The baggage coming off the plane and around the carousel, I mean, I know, Dirk did a video about that too, with the selfishness of people and that. But that is ridiculous how selfish people are about their positioning to get bags off the carousels. Mm-hmm. Like everyone is just rammed right up against it to the point where you have to like battle through them to get your bag, whereas everyone just stood back and relaxed. It would be absolutely fine. I find people's behaviour in airports an amazing mixture of utter stupidity and pure selfishness, and it does my head in.
Yeah. You don't feel good about people at an airport?
I generally, you know what? I don't. I think there are very few redeeming things about airports these days, except that they're the place you go to nice places. Right.
Except that they magically whisk you across oceans. Yes. That is the upside.
Yeah. And for that reason, I keep going to them.
Yeah. The thing that I find baffling, talking about people being selfish or rude at airports, is when you see, like, as much as I complain about the security line and how terrible things are set up, I cannot believe it when people are angry or rude to the security agents. I always feel like, what do you have a death wish? You want to get pulled off into the special room? Like, no, of course you don't. But I am amazed that people can't keep it under control in the security line.
I am so polite and nice to them that it must almost seem weird.
I am never more like turned up my I will be deferential and respectful to authority knob, right? Like that is at 11 when I'm on the security line. Right?
Like also when they ask you, have you packed anything dangerous and you're checking in and stuff, like the people checking me in too, I am like, those people get lovely Brady.
Exactly, yeah. Everybody is sir or ma'am. It doesn't matter if they're a 19-year-old drooling idiot, right? It is, yes, sir, right? No, sir, yes, ma'am,
yes,
no,
I packed
ma'am.
my bags with the most sincere look.
Full sentence answers in every possible way that I can, right? It's just that the person who goes through that security line is like a part of me that only exists in that security line, right? That human is never alive at any other moment, right? But he springs into existence to be super deferential then and never again.
In fact, that's how you met your wife in a security line. She's like, you've never been like that since. Where's the grey I met in that security line all those years ago?
Right. Yeah, you have to be a different person. But I am baffled when I see people being rude. I just feel like Man, what must you be like under normal circumstances? Because I'm assuming you're on your best behavior now.
At what point would you stop being like that? Like, if they did take you into the room, would you be like, would you like to check any other cavities? Well, like, at what point, I don't know, at what point you stop being that deferential to them? What could they do that would make you?
The moment you do get taken aside is a moment things can change very suddenly, right? Because the whole point of being super polite and deferential is to get through unharassed,
Yeah.
right? But the moment you're pulled aside for harassment, it's like, okay, now the strategy changes, right? Now it's time to lawyer up, and now this is a very different moment here. But anyway,
how was Las Vegas? I can't imagine you in Las Vegas.
Why not? Why can't you imagine me in Las Vegas?
Because it's like, I think of Las Vegas as a place of, like, fun.
You don't think of me as fun?
I don't imagine you enjoying fun.
I think that's definitionally impossible, what you're saying there.
Yeah, but this is you. Like I just imagine I don't imagine you would find fun, what the masses find fun. And Las Vegas is all about what the masses are supposed to find fun. What do you find fun? What do you like about Las Vegas?
I can see where you're coming from, because I don't gamble, and I don't smoke, and I basically don't drink, and I don't like staying up late at night and going to wild parties. So it seems like Vegas might not be the place that I should go.
You love strip clubs, though.
Yes, I was trying to imply that with the parties thing.
Okay.
Right? Let's keep it family friendly here.
What do you like then?
So, I really love Las Vegas.
White Tigers?
Barry
Manilow?
I have not seen any of these shows. No, I love Vegas because I feel like that is a city it really knows what it is, and there's no place else on earth like it. And even now, I'm really just talking about the Strip, because when I go to Las Vegas, it's not like I'm exploring the suburbs. I have no idea what Las Vegas is like 2 parallel streets over from the Strip. I've never been there. I have no idea. There's just this tiny isolated island that is Las Vegas as far as I'm concerned. But I love just the ridiculousness of the whole city, and how it feels like it's really true to itself. Like, we are going to have crazy resorts that would make no sense anywhere else in the world. Like, oh, we're going to build New York City inside of a city. Yeah, let's do that. That's a great idea. We're going to have a gigantic pyramid just down the block. Thumbs up. This is a great idea.
But then how do you... I respect that, but how does that keep you occupied, other than looking at it and going, nice one, Vegas. I like what you've done there. Like, other than looking at it from that perspective, what do you do? How do you engage with it? Like, how do you spend your time?
When I travel now, one of my primary things to do is just have downtime. I don't travel to see things really anymore like I used to when I was kind of younger. I am now traveling in a very different way, which is trying to cordon off a section of time from my regular working life where I can just do nothing. And my wife and I went to Las Vegas because we do really like that city. And it's a great place to be able to rent a really nice hotel room for relatively cheap, and to just be able to kind of like veg out. And we did see a few shows while we were there.
What'd you say?
We saw La Rêve, which was like this water. It was like a Cirque du Soleil style water show that was very. It was one of those things where it wasn't so much about the show itself. It was more about this amazing theater that they had built to do the show.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting, because there was the whole center of it was just water, and they were able to pour water down from the ceiling. So it was very interesting. And then we saw, it was called Zarkana or something like that, which was Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of Cirque du Soleil shows because I've been to Las Vegas a lot, and apparently every single hotel is required by law to have a Cirque du Soleil show in Las Vegas. I think that's written into the charter. So I've seen a bunch of them. I would not recommend Zarkana as people's first Cirque du Soleil show if they've never seen something before. Yeah. And the reason is my wife really nailed this one on the head, because we're watching the show and I'm sort of frowning at it, because one of the things they're doing is, okay, so they have all the acrobatics up front, but what they have behind are kind of 2 layers of screen where they're projecting stuff in the background so that they don't have to do the sets so much. they can kind of change the feeling very quickly of the stage by changing what's being projected in the back. But they also then made the terrible, terrible decision to, on those projectors, also be displaying people who are additionally doing acrobatics. So it's like you have the actual actors on the stage, and then behind them, they're playing pre-recorded people who have done stuff.
Right.
But then, of course, they go crazy because, like, well, this is all on the computer. We can make the people in the background do anything. And
Right.
I was watching the thing the whole time. I'm like, I don't quite like this, but I can't put my finger on it exactly. And when we came out, my wife said, that was the George Lucas special edition of Cirque du Soleil shows.
Right.
I was like, bam, that was exactly it. You put
Too
it
much stuff. Too
Yeah.
much stuff crammed in.
Yeah, it's like the George Lucas trailer for the new Star Wars movie, where the scene that I love was like, oh, the original there were 2 TIE fighters. It would be more impressive if there were 1,000,000 TIE fighters. And the Cirque du Soleil show was like that. Are 5 people on stage impressive? Surely 1,000 people dancing behind them on the computer is 1,000 times more impressive.
Doing better stuff by the sounds of it. You'd be
Yeah.
going, oh, I think I'm missing a better show. Well, the one behind the screen there looks really good.
That's exactly it. Oh, we'll have them fly through space. We'll have them do all kinds of stuff they can't possibly do. It's like, no, this is much worse. This is much worse. So it wasn't bad, but I would not, like, if you've never seen a Cirque du Soleil show, I would not pick that as the first one to go to.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we saw some shows, but mostly it was like a lot of lounging. Occasionally my wife and I would just walk through the casinos. Like, we like to go see them and try out different restaurants and things, but it's a very, very, very low key.
Did you gamble at all? Did you bet once?
I did not bet once, no.
Did you put a coin in a slot machine?
I did not. Slot machines are just too small stakes for me. They're just totally uninteresting.
I agree. Slot machines are pretty boring.
Yeah, it's like, why even bother with this? Oh, I'm going to put in a quarter and I can possibly win 10 quarters? Wow. Take my breath away with that excitement.
You could win the big jackpot where the alarms go off and everything, but
Not even all the slot machines have that. I don't gamble much, but if I'm going to gamble at all, I want a big payout.
you do sometimes get. I've had some big payouts on slot machines, and
How big?
that is
How
quite
big?
a fun feeling. Oh, I don't know. Probably.
$1 million?
Yeah, I've had a couple of $1 million ones, but I don't like to brag.
Yeah, no, you haven't. What have you won? $50?
No, you're right.
$100?
Yeah, 50, $100 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is what I mean. Like, if you're when you gamble, mathematically, you are guaranteed to lose. This is how it works. I always think the casinos, they're like this hilarious testament to the fact that everybody loses. Right? That it's like this big altar to the fact that you will lose, but people still go in and gamble if they find it fun. That's totally okay.
Losing's more fun sometimes too, though. I remember going to a casino in Adelaide with some mates, and right at the very start, I did some crazy bet, and I won like a decent amount of money. Which I was quite young, so it would have probably been like $100 or something, $200. And but to me, it was like a fortune. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm the big winner. And everyone was like, Brady, that's amazing. You've just had a big win. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to lose that now because I want to leave here a winner. So I stopped gambling like after 10 minutes. And the rest of my mates just gambled all night and had fun and drinks and lost some and won some and had a like for hours had fun. And I just sat there not gambling because I didn't want to lose my little win at the start, and so I could leave happy as a winner. And I had a miserable night and they had a brilliant night. So sometimes losing's more fun anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible strategy for an entertaining evening for you.
I know.
To go out with a bunch of people who want to gamble and then not gamble. That's
Well, I wanted to gamble too, but I also wanted to be a winner.
all right. So you were just overtaken by loss aversion, and you just sat there like a grump.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I remember I used to get the taxi home from a cab rank near the casino, and after one night out, I had like my cab fare left, and I went to the taxi rank, and then I thought, do you know what? And I went into the casino, into the roulette table, and put my cab fare down and said, if I win, I get a free cab home. Like, bet on black, And if I win, I get my cab fare home. And if I lose, I'll walk home as my punishment. And I won. Got a free cab home.
As your punishment for being stupid? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you went ahead with it anyway.
Yeah. And it worked.
But see, that's exactly
there you
the
go.
kind of bet I hate. So small stakes. So small stakes.
Doubling your money.
Yeah. I mean, the roulette table has got to be some of the worst odds in Vegas. I mean, this is one of the things I do love about Las Vegas is like the systems of it and the math of it everywhere. But the roulette tables, I think, is one of the worst gambling things that you can possibly do. The odds are terrible against you at the roulette table.
It's very easy and unthreatening though, roulette for gambling. Like it's very if you're not an experienced gambler, it's a very easy one to do.
Yeah, but I think those things are related. That it's super easy to do, but also has terrible odds. Games you need to learn more about, you can make the odds less bad, but they're still terrible. But it requires more effort on your part, so you get more serious players going.
Is
there.
roulette that terrible when you do some of the higher stakes bets? It's pretty, just towards the casino, isn't it? Like roulette's pretty. I don't know.
That's what I mean. I forget what it is, but like the maximum bet is something like 37 times your money back. But if you just do the odds of what's the likelihood of the wheel landing on there, it's awful. Like they should be paying you a much higher amount if it was actually fair, which of course it isn't. But it's those two zero things at the end that really kill everybody. But
yeah.
Anyway, I still say like those small scale bets, I'm not interested in those. If I'm gambling, I would gamble in the lottery where I can win enough money that I never have to do anything ever again, because I'm guaranteed to lose my dollar.
Yeah, well, that would sound a lot less hollow if you ever gambled at all, which you don't. So
I have occasionally bought lottery tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're asking me if I gambled in Las Vegas, and the answer is no, because none of those bets interest me. But every once in a while, I bought lottery tickets. I haven't bought them recently because I think you could make a graph of how sad do I feel about my life and how often have I purchased lottery tickets, and those two things are super highly correlated. Like in my final terrible year of teaching, which was perhaps the worst year of my adult life, I'm pretty sure I bought a lottery ticket every Friday. And I'm pretty sure that I haven't bought a lottery ticket in maybe 2 years now, maybe even
definitely
longer.
Not since the podcast started.
Yeah, definitely not since the podcast started. So yeah, I think that graph would be the case. But yeah, I've gambled sometimes, if you're going to count that. But you like to do your I'll take a 50-50 chance on just outright losing the money and costing myself an hour of my life.
I do not like gambling. I'm not a big gambler. Mm-hmm. I will have a go if I'm in Vegas, just because it's like, Vegas, baby, this is what we do. But
you don't have to. You don't have to do it. You can go to Vegas and never gamble once.
Yeah, I know. You could do that. You could go to the moon and shut your eyes and never look at it as well. But if you're going to go to the moon, you go and look at stuff. If you're going to go to Vegas, you have a flutter.
You have a what?
A flutter.
What's a flutter?
I think that's an Australianism for having a little gamble, but like just a little fun bet.
Is it supposed to be like your heart is a flutter? Is that the idea?
It's the same word. I don't know if it comes from your heart fluttering. I don't know what the origin of it is, but having a flutter is having a gamble. But yeah,
a flutter.
A flutter. It's the Grand National horse race tomorrow. You're not having a flutter on that?
I do not know what this is.
It's a horse race.
Yeah, I gather that it's a horse race.
There are no balls or shuttlecocks involved. Nothing will be thrown. Horses will run.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Are the horses actually running?
Two or three will die.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's unfortunate.
It is. It's terrible.
Do people take bets on the horses that will die?
No, I hope not. That would be terrible as well. But I remember, I'm not a big fan of...
the bets wouldn't cause the horses to die.
No, that's true. I'm not a big fan of jump racing. But I was sort of neutral about it until one time I actually went to a jumps race. Mm-hmm. And I stood right next to the jump because I thought, this will be really exciting because I'll, see the moment the horses jump over and maybe I'll see a crash and it'll be really interesting. And the horses came running up to the jump. And the look on their faces, like as they came up to the jump, like they were pulling back and they looked terrified. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is horrible what they're doing. And as the horses approached the jump, I was like, oh no, please, no one get hurt. And they all jumped over and I was like, oh, thank goodness. And they went around and did another lap and they came up to the jump again. And I was like, please, horses, I promise I'll never come to the jump races again. Just, I hope you all get over it. Mm-hmm. And they went over and one of them fell over and they had to kill it in front of me.
Well, what a delightful afternoon that sounded like. And yes, well, the first thing that I saw was that there had been some massive avalanche down at base camp, which you assured me was perfectly safe, and instead resulted in the deaths of numerous people. So this is how it originally came across my radar. And then looking into it, it seems like it has been a much bigger earthquake than just that one incident.
I have to say, I am staggered by how widespread this is. Like, because the earthquake didn't happen that close to Mount Everest. I mean, it's devastated Kathmandu, which is quite away from Mount Everest. And it has been really sad seeing, I mean, obviously it's incredibly sad, the number of people who died, but it's also been really sad seeing a lot of the landmarks and buildings that I really enjoyed and took photos of and stuff in Kathmandu have just been destroyed. But then also Mount Everest, I mean, I guess it's pretty fragile in the Himalaya and, you know, shaking these mountains around can dislodge snow. But I've been amazed by the scale of the impact it had at Mount Everest. I still think we'd have to have been very unlucky because you're only ever at base camp itself for sort of an hour or two when you do the trip. And you'd still would have been unlucky to have been right in the heart of base camp.
I feel. Wait, are you trying to back into the still a base camp trip? Is that where this is going? Is it like huge tragedy, but actually still we can go to base camp?
Well, I don't want to see the whole tourist industry of the Khumbu Valley obliterated because of tragedy.
No,
in fact, this is the time we should be supporting them.
Listen. The kinds of people who are going to go to Everest, this is not going to stop them. I don't think there are a lot of people on the margins of, ooh, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. If you're going to Everest, you know you're the kind of person who's going to Everest. I bet you the tourist trade is perfectly fine. I bet they'll be totally okay with people going back to Everest.
Well, not if scaredy cats like you keep.
But I was never going to Everest in the first place.
You're
right?
coming. You're coming if the rest of us come.
No. My statement was that the value proposition changes if everybody goes, but the value proposition has changed again with earthquakey, avalanchey death now very clearly on the horizon. As what you promised me was like, oh, you'll just be able to relax at base camp. You just get to chill out, just hang out. And now you're backtracking. Oh, we'll only be there for an hour. It won't be very dangerous. No, I don't like this.
You misinterpret what this base camp trip is like. You don't go and spend like time at base camp. It's a bit like going on a trip to Paris. And yeah, you spend like half an hour at the top of the Eiffel Tower because that's what you do. But there's like weeks of stuff either side. And it's like that with base camp. There's lots of...
Oh, forget it. Weeks. No.
Well, it's a long walk. I have to admit, though, I have to admit, I was talking to Dirk about it last night, and I did say we were talking about what happened in Nepal, and then we were also talking about, well, I guess this is going to put a dampener on the chances of Gray coming with us. And then he told me about a walk in the wilderness that you guys did the day before I arrived in Alabama.
Oh, yeah, you weren't there for that.
I wasn't there, but I was told, and I was shown photographic proof that you were a bit of a lightweight. And you were like, oh, it's so steep and oh, it's so rocky. And like, I saw a picture of you like gingerly holding onto a tree as if you were going to fall over while everyone else was just hanging around like they were normal human beings. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is a problem.
I won't try to defend myself except for the fact that I was wildly unprepared with the foot gear. And that would have been much less of a problem if I actually had boots. But I had completely worn down, perfectly smooth sneakers trying to walk down hills with wet leaves on them. So this was not ideal circumstances. And I was not described what this route would be like, probably on purpose, before we set off on it. That was not my idea of an entertaining time. I believe I called it a death march on the Random Acts of Intelligence stage is what it felt like, especially because Henry of Minute Physics, who's some kind of superhero, decides that after he's gotten off a long plane flight, the thing he needs to do to recuperate is basically march at top speed through the woods. And so this is why we were there in the first place. He got off the plane and was like, oh, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to march through the woods. And so we did. And I was like, I am not prepared for this. I did not sign up for this. I would never have gone along with this if I knew what it was in advance. And you get to make fun of it because you weren't there at the time. But I guarantee if you had been blindsided by that, you would have been grumpy like me.
I'm pretty hard. I would have handled it all right. I like a good walk, but yeah. I mean, I couldn't keep up with Henry. He's like ridiculous, but
it wasn't a walk. It was a descent is the best way to put it. Like I enjoy a good walk as well, but this was not a good walk.
Yeah. You like a nice walk, like, you know, through London to a burger bar or something with some fries.
You forget, man. I've gone into the national parks. I'm not as totally in the city kind of person as you think I am all the time. Let me tell you like a funny little thing here.
All right.
About interaction that I've just noticed. So I think I have mentioned before on the podcast that my parents retired from New York down to North Carolina several years ago. When I go visit them, there's a kind of a walking path behind where their house is, and there are a whole bunch of people who use the walking path and the surrounding houses. And as someone who lived in New York, when I visited them and would go on the path, I was always kind of just exhausted by the number of people who would say, good morning, right? And say hello, right? And we're just like walking by the stream of people, and so many of them would greet you, like look right at you and say hello. And to me, this is just totally startling. And also, as someone who lives in London, you can walk right by someone in a place like Hyde Park. Nobody acknowledges anybody else because you just can't possibly. But in North Carolina, I was surprised because I thought the people density here is too high to keep up this level of interaction, yet they still do it. It was absolutely exhausting.
So it's not like one person every 20 minutes or something. It's like a total stream of people both ways.
I will on this walking path, I would say it was probably at busy times like a person a minute, and they would still all say hi. And it was just exhausting. But my only point here that I did notice was that it was different depending on two factors. Am I walking with my wife? And is the other person walking with a partner of theirs? If you have two couples walking down the path, it was like 100% guaranteed that the other couple is going to say, oh, good morning to you. And then you say good morning as well and take off your hat and keep walking or whatever. But if it was two single people, and two, in particular, single guys walking past each other, that was the highest probability of not having to do anything except the nod. You know about the nod, right, Brady?
Yeah,
between guys.
I know the nod.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was just a pleasure. And it suggested to me that there are very many people who don't really want to do this, but it was like, oh, great. We're two guys. We're just walking past each other on the path. We'll just do the nod. And that's all that's necessary. We acknowledge the existence of the other person, but we don't have to keep saying like, oh, hello to you too, sir. What a fine day. And do it again and again and again on this walking path. Also, having a dog was death. If I was walking the dog, everybody says hi too. I was like, oh, great.
You should try walking Audrey. But two guys meeting like alone on a path in the woods does carry a certain amount of baggage that you may want to avoid. So I can see why you just move on as quickly as possible.
That's exactly it. We don't want this to end in a murder or a knife fight. It's like a bunch of silverback gorillas all walking past each other on the path. Right? We acknowledge each other, but we're staying out of our personal space, out of the territory, and that's the way it should be.
All right.
Anyway,
someone has pointed out this word. I'm going to try and pronounce it. No, I'm not. Lagniappe? Lagniappe? How would you say that? Lagniappe?
Yeah, you have to say it with a high tone like that, a high pitch.
You know how to read those Wikipedia how to say things.
No, I do not. I can see, I'm looking at it literally right now, and I see this stupid IPA, and you know how useful it is? 0% useful. That's how useful it is.
Oh, it looks, next to it, it's got Lagniappe written. Is it Lagniappe? Lagniappe?
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
oh, man, we're just embarrassing ourselves.
You're embarrassing yourself because this is your note and you didn't look it up ahead of time.
I only looked at it like 5 seconds before we started recording.
Okay, to be fair, that is more preparation than I did.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got the how do you say guy doing it.
And
Lagniappe is the way he's saying it.
Just Lagniappe. It looks posher than that. It looks like it should be more exotic.
He has two ways to say it, but I'm having a hard time hearing what he's doing with the first one. I'll put the audio in because this is that guy that everybody knows as the dude who pronounces words guy.
Lagniappe or lagniappe.
This is the word for, according to Wikipedia, a small gift given to a customer by a merchant at the time of purchase. So the example used on the page here is like getting an extra donut when you buy a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
The example I used last week was the guy I bought a car from giving me like a sponge to wash my car.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there's a word for it, and I do think it's an interesting phenomenon, this whole giving someone something to make them feel special.
Lagniappe.
I like there's, you know me, I like words.
You do love your words.
Maybe I can appropriate that word sort of freeboot style and give it some new meaning at some point in the future. Oh, you know how I could use it? When I make a video like, like a number file video that's like 10 minutes long, that there's some extra footage I cut and I put it on number file 2, I could call that my Lanyap video. If you'd like some Lanyap to go with this video, go over to number file 2.
No, it doesn't make any sense. The viewers haven't purchased anything. It's a terrible reappropriation of this word. No, thumbs down.
What?
This cannot happen.
I feel like they've given me their time and their attention, and for that, I'm going to give them the extra footage
A
that
small
they otherwise
gift
wouldn't have seen.
given to a customer by a merchant at the time of purchase. That's not your bonus video is nothing like that.
Gray,
This is
you're
totally
misunderstanding.
different.
You're misunderstanding.
I understand that you're trying to take a word that has a
change it.
perfectly solid definition and just broaden it. This
like
happens.
freebooting. It's like a new use for it. My
Freebooting-
Lanyap videos. Oh, I love Brady's Lanyap videos. They're the best. I don't like Gray's Lanyap videos so much. They're a bit short, but Brady does good Lanyap videos.
I don't have any Lanyap videos. I will never have a Lanyap video. That's not going to happen. I'll have footnotes. I'll have extra videos. I'll have bonus videos, but not Lanyap videos because that doesn't make any sense and it's a terrible reappropriation. No. I can hear you breathing in. No, whatever you got, I do not approve of this. This will not happen. I mean,
No,
I guess
I'm
I
just-
can't stop you, but no one will go along with this plan.
The harder you go in against me, the more likely I am to succeed. So I'm just letting you help me.
I am not helping you.
Lanyap videos. Keep an eye out, people. I'll put it in the video description.
God damn it. No, you won't.
Thank you for watching this Lanyap video. Brought to you by.
No,
Maybe I won't. I don't know yet. Let's see.
I hate
Don't rule it out.
I hate it when words have solid, precise, specific definitions and they kind of turn to mush over time. I mean, it happens with every single word in existence, but still, I find it frustrating when this occurs. That's all you're
Okay.
doing is accelerating this process now. I have 2 books that I can say majorly changed the course of my life. One which is less interesting and one which is probably a little bit more interesting. So I'll go with the less interesting one first. Although the less interesting one is vastly more important in some ways, and that is Getting Things Done by David Allen, which I've mentioned before on the podcast as a book I really like. But that really was, no joke, the book that allowed me to transition from I'm an idiot who can't do anything into, oh, I'm an adult who can be organized and change the course of my life. I think that book definitely had the biggest single impact of any book that I ever read.
See, Logan could just lift that bit of the podcast and chuck it on Call Me Ishmael.
We have licensing agreements, I think, if he's trying to.
Oh no, he'll have to give us a big whack of cash,
yeah.
of course.
We
Yeah,
can't just take that. But yes, that one is far less interesting. But it is really true. I feel like there is the time in my life before I read Getting Things Done, and there is a time in my life after I've read Getting Things Done, and the people on either side of that divide are hugely, hugely different people.
Oh man, I just feel like I should maybe read that book at some point. Would it help me from what you know of me?
No, I don't think anything would help you, Brady. I'm going to be honest here. You just are the way you are, and I don't think anything can help you. But I also don't know if you need anything to help you. You seem pretty happy.
All right. What's your other book?
The book that started me down the course of deciding that I wanted to do physics as a major and going to the college that I went to do physics, which was Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, which I read in high
No,
school.
you understood that book.
Okay, well, I'll be clear here. I read the illustrated edition back in high school, which is beautiful, by the way. I still, in my parents' house, I still actually have it. It's this big, big book that has these amazing diagrams on all the pages. The diagrams, they really help. If you're going to read A Brief History of Time, I highly suggest you get the illustrated version. I was kind of not really aware of physics before then. It happens to be the way that my school did physics. Each year of science was all by itself. So in freshman year, we just did, I think it was all geology. And then sophomore year, we just did all biology, and junior year was all chemistry. So you didn't have like how I taught here, where it's mixed up every year. So I was kind of floating along, not really aware of physics. And then I read that book and I really liked it. So that one definitely is a book that I can point to as having a big impact on my life.
Cool. All right. Well, if you enjoyed hearing that little vignette from Gray and you want to hear hundreds and hundreds of more people talk about the books they liked, check out Call Me Ishmael, and that will make Logan happy and means he will let me use this booth again on future trips to New York to record Hello Internet. And that's endgame for me.
It's endgame for you?
Yeah. And it's a good site, and Logan's a good man. Let's move on, though. He has had more than enough promotion for nothing. For nothing, he got that. And I've bought him tickets for the baseball tonight.
Baseball. That's the one with shuttlecocks, right?
No, baseball. Baseball's the one where they throw the ball.
Oh, they throw the ball. They don't bowl it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to the Yankees versus the Mets.
Does anybody die in those games? Do they shoot the players in front of you if they don't do well? Is that how that works?
Not that I've ever seen. I hope they don't. No. You don't mind baseball, do you? Do you like baseball?
Oh, so boring. So boring.
Yeah, just boring. But you understand that. But you do kind of understand the rules of that one, don't you?
Yeah.
Just because it's in your DNA, isn't it?
Because I had to play it in gym, and I would always remember far left field is the position that you want when you play in gym, and you don't want to participate
far
in
left
this
field
sport, right? I would always go for far left field, and then just stand out there.
There's no such thing as far left field.
Daydreaming, looking at, and then every once in a while the ball would come near me, and oh god,
I would pay money to see you playing baseball. That would just make me laugh. I'm just imagining you swinging a bat and then running to first base, and it actually is making me smile.
The problem was always that being in the outfield and trying to do the catches and fast passes, I could, that was just hopeless. Actually, just hitting the ball I was pretty good at. And that's super satisfying if you play baseball, even for someone who has no interest in sports and would never do it on their own. When you hit the baseball, that crack of the bat is a very satisfying, enjoyable experience. So I have played baseball.
Oh, I feel a little bit proud of you then.
Why?
The thing I can't imagine though is you running. You running just doesn't come into my head very easily.
I was very briefly on the track team because I had to be.
Really?
Yeah. This is a parental requirement that I try some sports. And I don't know why, but somehow I thought track would be the easiest because it wasn't a team sport. So I was thinking everybody could just leave me alone. I just have to run around in this circle, but I don't have to interact with the other people. Fine, I can do this. But I really hated track, and I gave it up as soon as I possibly could. But I was very briefly on the track team.
I can't imagine your running action. I just can't imagine what that would be like.
It's amazing, Brady. I don't like to run, but when I do run, it is majestic.
You're good at it. You've got it down.
It's like watching Tom Cruise run. It's just amazing. It's cinematic is what it is. I just choose not to.
Well, let's crack out the high-speed camera sometime and make some videos of you running.
No, that's not going to happen. Not ever. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, we have to move on because you have written in the show notes bra shopping. Are you shopping for bras, Brady?
This is a topic that I am already regretting.
Too late now.
Yeah, let's do this. It came about the other day. Basically, my wife really enjoys shopping for clothes.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very fashionable woman.
She is?
I quite enjoy going with her, and she'll be looking at dresses and all the different things that she looks at, and she asks my opinion, and I try to give them, and I actually, what I really enjoy is sort of going off on my own and finding something that I think she'll like, and bringing it to her and going, "What do you think of this? I think this is your style," and she'll be like, "Oh, it is, yeah." I feel really proud when I manage that, and she likes what I found. So I'm not averse to clothes shopping. But there is a problem. And I know this is who would this apply to? This must surely only apply to men who have female partners. I can't think what other configuration this would cause the same level of awkwardness to. But anyway, being a man who has a female partner, when she ventures into the bra section of the shop, I find this a very, very difficult and very awkward to know what to do. Because at that point, I can't browse on my own, really. Because I think that looks a bit unusual if
You could.
Yeah, I could, of course. And I know there are men who often buy lingerie for their partner, but
you don't need to stick to traditional gender stereotypes here, Brady. You can be a new modern man.
I know. And but also when I've got a really bad habit of I'm quite tactile when I'm shopping, so I like to stroke all the fabric and stuff. And I think if I'm
just like you stroke the microphone. Yeah,
exactly. I'm a bit of a fidgeter. So if I'm looking at dresses and that, I feel quite comfortable sort of stroking all the dresses and the fabric to see what they're like. But if I'm in the bra section, I feel like I would look a bit wrong if I'm stroking underwear?
No. Brady, you have to touch it to know the quality of the material. So I don't see, you should definitely go ahead with this behavior.
I don't feel comfortable. But like, I know this is my insecurities, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I find it like if I'm in the, dress section, I'm quite comfortable making eye contact with other women and smiling at them and, how you going? But if I'm in the bra section, suddenly I feel like if I'm looking like at another woman shopping and she's looking at bras and then she looks up and sees me looking at her, I feel a bit creepy. Like, oh, I'm watching you bra shop. I feel like a bit of a weirdo. And I know I'm not. And again, I know this is just my insecurities. But anyway, while this was happening, the thing that occurred to me was, what does CGP Grey do? What would you do? Do you, like, because I find myself in this situation and it just seemed like an awkward situation. And I thought to myself, I bet Grey doesn't even do this. I bet he just walks away. But then I realized I didn't know. So I thought, I'm going to ask Grey.
Okay.
Do you bra shop on your own with your wife? Do you have a bra section policy?
Okay. So here's the thing with us, Brady. I think we are sometimes so different, we can't even conceive of the level of difference in the other person. Because I dimly knew what you wanted to talk about with this. And I was like, oh, okay, I have a guess of where he's going. But right out of the gate, your story was just totally different from what I was expecting.
What were you expecting?
Well, I was expecting the much more standard version of this story, which is that you get dragged shopping with your partner, right? And that you have to tag along and then you find yourself in the bra section and, oh, isn't it embarrassing? I didn't realize that you were gleeful to go along on the shopping expedition. Not only gleeful, but actively participating in your partner's shopping expedition, hunting for dresses, bringing them back. This is amazing to me. I can't even understand this.
Well, I wouldn't say gleeful. Like, clearly the thing I want to do is like look at the gadgets and technology and things, or look at like things that are interesting to me. And my wife and I share a lot of things we find interesting, like, furniture maybe, or we both like antiques and we both like, and because she wants to look at clothes, I'm happy to do that. And like I said, I see it as a little challenge. I wouldn't like beg to go clothes shopping, but I don't even like clothes shopping for men's clothes, but I would do it. So I wouldn't say I beg to do it or gleeful, but I do it. But it is exactly as you describe. Then when I find myself in the bra section, like I'm supportive and like, I get it, supportive. No, I'm willing to do it because, I want to help my wife and join her for the expedition. But that's the area where I suddenly feel out of my depth and a bit like, I just haven't learned how to do it yet. I haven't learned how to do it cool because I'm just maybe not a cool guy. So where are you? You just don't go clothes shopping at all, or like where do you stand on all this?
Many, many years ago, before I met the woman who would become my wife, when I was involved in relations with other women, I remember getting dragged along for clothes shopping. And I think because I was a younger person, a person who wasn't thinking about how their life is going and the way things work in the world, I just went along with this because it's what you see everybody else do. You go into any clothing shop primarily for women and you will see a bunch of men kind of loitering around. Yeah. Usually burdened like alpacas, right? With bags slung over their backs that they are carrying. And so I did this too as a much younger person. But one day there was a particular shopping trip which lasted a very long time. I don't remember, but I feel like it was a full work day's worth of shopping for clothing with a particular person. And this was supposed to be the weekend. Right? Like, oh, I was going to have a whole day to myself. No, you have a whole day under fluorescent lighting, looking at clothing that's not even for you, and having to have your input asked on 1,000 tiny decisions. That's really the exhausting part of this. Is it's not even the being there, it's the 1,000 little decisions. It just melts your brain into a pool of nothingness. After this particularly long shopping event, I was pushed over my limit and I decided, hey, wait a minute. I don't have to do this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to give up my weekend to go clothing shopping for another person. If someone asked me to go clothing shopping with them, the answer is just no. no, I'm not going clothing shopping. I have no interest in this, and I will be of no help, and it will be just a total misery. And no, I'm not going to do this. So from that day onward, I have not gone clothing shopping with any of the partners in my life. Now, very luckily, my wife never even knew about this policy because she never even asked me to go clothing shopping with her. It would never occur to her to bring me along clothing shopping. So this works out very well. She doesn't want me to go, and I don't want to go, and we're both very happy.
Hang on. She didn't ask you, but do you know she doesn't want you? Do you think maybe she might get pleasure from you being there and helping and giving?
No. She does not want me there.
But she doesn't want you there probably because you're a grumpy guts who doesn't like it. But would she want you there if you were like being helpful and supportive and interested? Like
she doesn't want me there because she doesn't want to be there either. She also wants to go shopping and get stuff done as fast as possible. And when you do it with two people, it's like, oh, now it's like an outing. It's just much slower. And something that never crossed my mind. But my wife has very often complained that when she goes shopping, she has to deal with all of these partners of the other women in the stores blocking the aisles, getting in the way because they don't know where to stand. And because they're in the bra section, they can't make eye contact. You can't make like can you move to the side gesture because they're just looking at their feet on the floor trying to get out of the way. So my wife is frustrated by the other men in the women's clothing department who obviously don't want to be there, who are just sad sacks, who are beasts of burden holding on to a bunch of bags. And I actually, you know what? Let me take this moment, right? Let me use the power of the podcast here.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a guy listening to me right now and your arms are getting sore and tired from the bags of clothing that you are holding right now, and you're listening to a podcast to try to escape the horrible drudgery of following your partner around on a shopping expedition on the weekend, perhaps it's Sunday, you could be doing all kinds of great stuff, watching sports ball on the TV instead or something. I don't know, whatever you do, World of Warcrafting. You still have to finish this today because you've already agreed to this. But in the future, you don't have to. You don't have to go along with this. You're a grown person. Your partner is presumably a grown person. You can each shop for clothing on your own, separately. You don't have to do this together. Live a freer, happier life. Say no.
Can I now speak to those same people?
Sure.
If you're a man out shopping with a woman, you have a female partner, and that is something that gives her pleasure, enjoy it as well. Enjoy her pleasure. Doing things together makes you closer, and doing things that make her happy with you is a positive experience.
Doing things you both enjoy is a positive experience.
If you don't enjoy it, but she wants you to be there for support, be it moral or financial, also
even better.
Also enjoy that, because one day you will both be old and slow and unhappy, and you're not going to sit there thinking, I wish I'd done more things on my own. You're probably going to sit there thinking, I wish I did more things with my partner. And finally, one final thing. If you, like me, find yourself in the bra section and you have figured out how to make that work, do let me know, because I can't figure it out, and obviously Gray is going to be no help whatsoever.
I am like the most help that I could possibly be. I want to give you time back and take you out of this situation for which there's no way to win.
I don't want to spend less time with my wife.
I don't think there are very many men who have on their deathbed thought, I wish I did more clothing shopping with my wife. Well, that's the way you're presenting that there. I don't think that's accurate.
Well, you're right. We are quite different, and pretty much I kind of half expected this result. Like when I sent you that text from the bra section at the shop, which was awkward in itself because I was taking out my phone, which also doubles as a camera these days.
Right.
I did think, I bet Gray never even finds himself in these bra sections.
Nope.
Because he's just stubborn and would just refuse to be anywhere he doesn't want to be.
Stubborn. That's it. You always turn these things at the very end into something more than they are. But no. That's what you always do. That's your
That's
MO.
My thing.
Yeah,
That's my thing.
I know what you're up to. Oh, let's take a particular example, and now we'll just broaden it out into, he never does anything that he doesn't like for his partner ever. Though that's not at all the situation.
I know. But I do just enjoy it anyway.
You do love to
twisting.
rile, yeah.
I like to leave you twisting in the wind.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You want to get the final word in, and you look like, oh, look at you. You're such a hero, Brady. And oh, look at him. He's such a jerk.
I'm not a hero. I'm a creepy, weird guy staring at his shoes in the bra section.
Yeah, you are.
That's not a hero.
I can save you from that.
Okay. Well, thank you for hearing me out. And your advice is kind of what I expected, but it's still interesting to hear.
Can't you just wait somewhere else?
Yeah, but it's not like it takes that long.
Sometimes if my wife and I are out and she happens to see something in a store that she's interested in,
Yeah.
she'll pop in really quick to take a look. Many stores have what is very obviously set up as the man waiting area. They'll have
Yeah.
like a little chair at the front, which is so clearly for husbands and things to wait in. Like these expeditions with my wife last minutes because she knows that my patience will run very short. But surely there is some place that you can just retreat for a few moments while the bra shopping is being done. Like you don't really need to be there.
If it's going to be lengthy and there's another place within like eye line, sometimes I will go. But I don't know. I think my wife appreciates sort of input, and she wants to do things together. And Lord knows, I'm in New York for 2 weeks, and Lord knows I spend enough time away on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think we have spent more time talking about bras than I thought we ever would in the history of this podcast. So.
You had sneakily arranged for a penguin to be named after me at the zoo. Is that the best way to describe how this came out? I was almost overwhelmed and confused when it happened, and I was trying to think who did this, and I think you did this. You arranged this.
Well, I suggested it. It's actually very unusual for animals at the zoo to be formally named, and I think only 1 or 2 penguins of the numerous penguins at the zoo have names. But because we managed to, with the help of our viewers, raise so much money for the conservation of penguins, and because maybe they just thought we were nice guys, the zoo said, okay, we're going to name a penguin CGP Grey. And they had a couple of newborn chicks. So I went along on the Thursday before and said, all right, let's get some photos and video footage of the penguin. So when Grey finds out, I can put a video on YouTube or a blog, and we can, show everyone what the penguin looks like. So I went along to the zoo, and they had not yet chosen the penguin, and there were 2 chicks. So I turned up at the enclosure with the keepers, and they said, all right, well, which one are we going to call CGP Grey? And the decision was made so easy by the fact that there was one big, fat, very grey, fluffy penguin called Grey with a grey number tag on its wing, just sitting there next to its dad, doing nothing. And the other one was nowhere to be seen. The other one was off having adventures. So I said, I'm going to choose that one.
The other penguin having adventures is informally named Brady.
Well, that's not the case, but the big fat slow one doing nothing, procrastinating.
Yes, is this how you think of me?
Yeah, asking for its father to vomit into its mouth. That is CGP Grey. So, and I will tell you, the penguin that is named after Grey, or is named CGP Grey, is the one wearing the wing tag number A20583. You'll need binoculars or very good vision to see, because the tags are very small. So that is you, and there's a certificate. They gave you an official certificate to do it, and there's these official database of zoo animals, and that's going to be officially amended to have your name on it, so it becomes the real deal. But the thing I didn't tell you, and the thing I only just found out, is we don't actually know what gender CGP Grey is. And that is not something we will find out until it has its 6-monthly health check, when they take a sample and send it off. They don't lift up the feathers and have a look. They do it with science. So in about 4 months' time, we will find out if CGP Grey, the penguin, is a boy or a girl. And presumably by that time, it'll be more of a black and white penguin, not such a grey penguin like it is at the moment.
When you say they do it with science, do they do it with a DNA test? Is that what you mean?
I think so. I think they take a bit of blood, and they also take feather samples, and they do it with that. So I'm presuming they must just do it with DNA.
You know about chicken sexers?
Yes. But what do they do? What's the skill to that?
The skill to being a chicken sexer is being able to quickly identify the sex of a chicken. And there are some very funny videos of chicken sexers at work picking up chickens very quickly pulling up some feathers and then putting them in a pile, whether they are male chickens or whether they are female chickens.
Yeah. See, I thought they'd do that with the penguins, but I think they like to touch them as little as possible, and keep it real.
I'm sure CGP Grey the penguin would also prefer to be touched as little as possible.
Yes. So if people go to the show notes, hopefully by the time this goes out, I will have got Mike together properly with Grey, and we'll have pictures available, and there's a little video of the penguin. But the challenge I want to throw down is I want people to go to Bristol Zoo and take their own pictures or have a selfie with CGP Grey, the penguin, in the background. And if you do that and sort of tweet it or email it or whatever, you are going to get the love, at least from me, maybe even from Grey.
It's going to be quite a challenge to find that penguin in that enclosure.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got to go to Bristol Zoo. So,
but even once you're there, this is people going to be the hardest Where's Waldo ever.
Yeah, especially when Grey grows up a bit and looks like all the other penguins. At the moment, he's quite unique because he's fluffy and grey, and all the other penguins are black and white. But in a few months, when he becomes black and white, you're right. That's going to be hardcore.
This is basically the challenge is on easy mode now, but so if you want to practice while it's easy, now's the time to go. And then you can go later and show off your amazing penguin identifying skills later on. Because the zookeeper did say that all of the penguins eventually develop a unique pattern of black spots on the front of their chest.
Indeed.
So maybe someone, when CGP Grey is an adult, can find him or her and take a picture and show us the unique pattern of spots on CGP Grey.
Do you feel any kind of attachment or bond? Like, are you now curious about sort of this penguin's future, or are you just like, whatever, you stupid Brady? Or are you going to be like, do you think you'll go to the zoo again to see it or anything?
This is the crazy irrational thing that does work, where I think, oh yes, for nonsensical reasons, I do feel like I hope that penguin turns out okay. I hope he has a great life in the zoo or in South Africa if they reintroduce him into the wild. I don't know if they do that.
I don't think that will happen to that penguin. It could get transferred to another zoo, but I don't think they would release that to the wild. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
I feel like CGP Grey the penguin would vastly prefer the easy zoo life than living in South Africa. That might be much harder.
I have already told them that I want to go along and film the 6-month health checkup when they do take him in and take blood and feathers and stuff. And I have also told Grey that I'm gonna take some extra special pictures and do extra updates for for our Patreon supporters. So if you follow Hello Internet on Patreon, you will occasionally get like an extra high-res picture and like health updates and stuff, mainly because I think only those people are kind of interested enough to be subjected to such minutiae of our life.
I think that is an excellent thing to put on the Patreon.
Yeah,
I was more flattered than I expected to be, and it was a very nice, if quite surprising and slightly derailing for a few moments thing to have done to me. So thank you very much for that, Brady, and of course thank you to the zoo for doing it.
Have you told your family about it yet?
Okay, so I did tell my family about it, and particularly when I was telling my parents, the very first question out of their mouth was, why didn't Brady get a penguin? That was the first question.
Well, I'll tell you what. I am more than happy for you to have the penguin, because I find that far more amusing. But I will say something that happened later on and ruin the chronology of the day, because later in the day, the zoo actually did spring a surprise back on me. And it wasn't that they've named a lion or something after me, but what they do is they do have a very limited number of animals that people can adopt. And for example, in the penguin enclosure, there's one penguin that everyone adopts. I think it's called something like Polly or something like that, Polly the penguin. But they made a special exception, and they have made me the official adopter of CGP Grey the penguin. And actually...
Oh, look at that.
I have this in front of me here. Hang on. It's in a box, so I have to open this box. But I have an adoption certificate, which I'm holding in front of me, and we'll put a scan on the notes and stuff like that. Certificate of adoption. This is to certify that Brady Haran has adopted CGP Grey the penguin. And I've got
you have parental responsibilities.
I know, I've got all these birth certificates, and it's really like official looking document. It's really nice. It's somewhere between a real birth certificate and having a Cabbage Patch Kid, but Anyway, that's fantastic. So I was not left out. You may have a penguin, but I kind of have. I have the adoption of you. Mm-hmm. So everyone was a winner, and everyone came away with a little certificate. I will keep mine and probably display it in some way. What Gray will do with his, well, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows if he even still has it? But I'm sure he does. I'm sure even Robot Gray couldn't throw that one in the trash.
It is in my wife's handbag as we speak.
How she's going to carry it everywhere? Is she like?
Maybe that's the plan.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll
anyway,
have to figure it out.
Anyway, it was a really fun little moment. It was really good. We then and I cannot tell you how beautiful the weather was. We then went into the penguin enclosure and went to like the public talk, and like another zookeeper came out and like did the talk to everyone about penguins while they were feeding them fish and stuff like that. CGP Grey was just hiding in the corner with his mum or dad. He or she did not partake of the fish because Grey's too young for that sort of thing. But all the other penguins were just freaking out and eating tons and tons of fish.
I do have to say that is the moment that I felt the closest to CGP Grey the penguin, was when there was a huge amount of activity and hustle and bustle going on in this penguin arena, and he or she decided that the corner was the best place to be. The corner behind a bush, basically by himself.
Well, asleep if we're going to be honest. The CGP Grey was sleeping the whole time. And there was a moment when the zookeeper sort of said, oh, and by the way, thank you to Hello Internet for coming and your support for the penguins. Like, she'd obviously been told to say this and clearly had no idea what Hello Internet was. And it sounded like the most robotic thank you, but it was really funny. And yet I felt strangely proud. Like I was like, oh, wow, like we're a real thing now because a zookeeper said us to a crowd of people.
And I just said, this was all your doing, Brady.
No, I had nothing to do with that.
You pulled this whole thing together. I mean, the day you made the day happen, and you should take pride in
the
that.
zoo, mate. The zoo did all the organising. I just barked a few instructions and gave a few tips and said, "Oh, it'd be funny if you named a penguin after Grey and stuff like that." It was Abby from the zoo who did all the actual work. So thank you to her. So anyway, now all of this time, by the way, not only were we joined by 30 to 40 Hello Internet listeners, we were joined by David Prowse, Darth Vader himself. He wasn't just going to swan in at the end. He actually came and listened to the talks and was hanging out with us.
It was great. I got a chance to shake the hand of a man who has crushed many people's throats through telekinesis. It was quite the honor.
It was good. So from the penguin enclosure, although it was a beautiful day, we did what all kind of nerdy people do and went inside to watch videos.
Honestly, that did feel like the most perfect moment for us. Like, look at this beautiful day. We're going to go inside and watch a movie.
Yeah. So we went into a nice little sort of education center they have at the zoo where they'd set up a little makeshift cinema. We were given some biscuits and some tea, and we hung out a bit, and then we all took our seats, and it was time to watch Star Wars Episode 4. A New Hope, with Darth Vader in the audience.
Yes.
It was a special time, wasn't it?
It was a very special time. It was a very special time. Now, I want to say something about this little moment. We're watching Star Wars. We're sitting down, the lights are off, the movie begins. And the way this worked is, when we were talking about originally what we were going to be watching Star Wars, one of my initial concerns was, which version of Star Wars are we going to watch? Is the zoo just going to handle this? How is this going to work? And I wanted to make sure that we watched a version that I may have. Okay, I'm not going to deny it. A version that I do have, which is the Star Wars despecialized editions. So for people who may be unaware, the despecialized editions are this kind of amazing piece of work where I think it's a team of people have gone through and done their best to collect as much of the original footage that has been made available from Lucasfilm from the original Star Wars, and kind of correct the colors and clean it up, but also take out all of the George Lucas special edition nonsense stuff that was added in, what was it, the late 90s, I think was a special edition. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, there were a few different special editions, weren't there? It was kind of, the meddling was kind of done in stages.
That was one of the things as well. There are several versions of this, but I don't know exactly who is behind this, but I can tell you that If I was in charge of the government, I would give the people who have done those despecialized editions a medal of cultural preservation of the highest order. It's an amazing piece of work to see. The only thing that's a little bit weird about watching them is that the resolution sometimes flips a bit from kind of low resolution footage to high resolution footage if they weren't able to like get a couple of shots in high resolution, because the only high resolution versions available are ones with specialized crap all over them.
Yeah.
So the way this worked is we discussed it and we're like, okay, yeah, obviously we have to watch the despecialized editions. So
in my defense here, Gray, you didn't even have to tell me this. I basically came to you and said, this is what we're going to do. And you were like, of course. You were like, I felt like you were a bit proud of me. Like I said, we're going to go for despecialized, aren't we? I had already thought about this and taken the bull by the horns. I had already discussed this with the zoo. Like I was all over this. I didn't need to be told this.
To be fair, of the two of us, I would probably say that you are the bigger Star Wars fan. I think if you could rank Star Warsitude, you would be higher on this than I am.
Right.
And we've discussed this many times. I think it's because you are slightly older than I am. I can't remember. Did you see them in the theaters or not? I don't remember.
I saw the only one I saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi. But
okay, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never saw any of them in the theater. I only ever saw them on VHS as a kid.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, this is all to the side. So
yeah.
I had given you the despecialized edition, and then you gave the despecialized edition to the zoo.
Well, you'd actually given it to me. Quite a long time ago, like almost a year ago. Right, yeah. Whenever
we first started talking about this,
yeah.
I gave it to you, and then I think the day before the zoo, I gave it to you again just to make sure. I was like, oh god, we ought to watch the despecialized edition.
You sent it to me again, but I said, don't worry, I've already given it to them. I sent it to them. I said, this is the one to show. They said, we'll have a DVD as backup, and I said, don't worry, this is the one to show. And I had electronically sent it to them. I said, make sure this works, play it up on the big screen first. If there's a problem, let me know. I'll bring it on a USB. But you know, this is a very particular version we want to show. And they didn't know from Adam, but they were like, all right, we'll just play what you
right.
what you send.
I'm absolutely sure that the zookeepers are like, okay, nerds. Like, I don't know why you're being so picky about this, but whatever, guys.
Yeah.
But this is basically the nerd equivalent of like, there can be no green M&Ms in our M&M bowl. Like, it has to be this exact file. Like, okay, guys.
Yeah.
But so anyway, when we start to watch the movie, suddenly there is a moment where there are stormtroopers riding dinosaurs, basically. And I thought, oh my god, this can't be. But I was confused because I thought, wait, it's been a long time since I watched the despecialized edition. Were there some shots that they just couldn't get clear versions of? And so were there a couple of shots with specialized stuff in it?
Yeah, they had to just throw their arms in the air and say, we can't save that one or something. Yeah.
So, and as the movie is going on, I'm kind of getting more and more confused, and I'm seeing stuff from the specialized edition, but there's also a couple of shots where I'm thinking, no, I know that one Lucas put extra crap in, but the extra crap isn't there. So do I just badly remember the despecialized edition? I basically was having a kind of anxiety attack in the back of the movie theater, trying to think about like, what possibly happened? And like, am I just misremembering? I thought the despecialized edition was the greatest thing that humanity has ever produced.
You were giving out medals a minute ago.
I know. And then I was like, do I just not remember it? In particular, there's a thing, like there's one shot where R2-D2 is hiding in a cave, and I know for a fact CGI rocks were put all in front of him in a way that makes no sense, but that wasn't in this version. So I was like losing my mind. And I thought, oh my god, I don't know what's happening. But as it was going on, it became more and more clear, especially when a dinosaur walks in front of the screen and literally blocks out the entire frame for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, no, this is definitely the special edition.
Yeah. Or a special edition.
Yeah, a special edition.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know how this happened. And I thought I gave Brady the file, and I know Brady passed it on, and I thought, oh my god, I have made a terrible mistake. Like, well, what did I do? And I'm trying to pull out my phone and look on Dropbox to see like which version of the file did I give. But you live on like the outer rim planets, so you have no cell phone connection anywhere in that whole town, as far as I can tell, which is a slightly other complaint of mine. But so I couldn't get Dropbox, and I was freaking out. I just couldn't believe it. And then we get to the scene. Oh god, where Han Solo is talking to a CGI Jabba the Hutt and steps on his tail, and there's like a squeaky sound when he steps on his tail. And I swear, when that came on screen, I had to leave. I had to step out. I couldn't deal with it. I pretended like I had to go to the bathroom. I really didn't. I just had to walk out of the room for a minute and like catch my breath and not also watch that absolutely horrible, horrible scene, doubting myself. And I thought, I somehow messed this up. And all I was thinking of is one of our earlier conversations where I talk about how I don't have any regrets. This is going to be one of the things that I will regret until the end of time. I made people watch the specialized edition. Not only that, I made David Prowse, Darth Vader himself, watch the specialized edition. And if it couldn't be any worse to add one additional dagger into my heart, there were 3 people with us that day who had never seen Star Wars. Absolute Star Wars virgins. And what do they see for the first time? The specialized edition. And I did not know how this happened.
Yeah, so I have to say my heart sunk as well, and I did have a bit of a moment. Not least of all because I'd told people before the screening that we were going to watch the despecialized one as well. So I'd kind of bragged that, don't worry, we've got it under control, guys. And then we showed them that some of those nonsense scenes. But I have to say, after I got over the initial shock, I didn't take to it quite as badly as you, but it certainly was a cock up of some scale.
The thing that is amazing is the movie, from my opinion, like it still shines through the special edition, right? And it is still definitely enjoyable. There's one thing that I wonder. So I've occasionally heard that younger people cannot tell the difference between the original Star Wars movies and the prequel Star Wars movies, which is always horrifying to me whenever I hear this, that there's kind of no distinction drawn. And as we were watching the specialized edition, I thought, I can kind of understand maybe why that would happen, because everything that has been added in the specialized version is like the same kind of just childish or distracting stuff that is all over the screen that just doesn't need to be there, that doesn't add anything to the plot.
Yeah, he sprayed some of that crap all over the good stuff so it matched the bad stuff.
Yeah, and I was watching it and thinking like, oh yeah, I could see how the tone of these movies is much less different if you're watching the specialized edition, at least in the very beginning of Star Wars.
So when Gray says specialized edition, as he keeps saying, he means special edition.
Yeah, special
as
edition.
opposed to despecialized, but
yeah. That's my bad.
No, I know. We know what you mean.
I would be curious for feedback of people who've seen that as the first time. Like, do they notice all of this stuff? Does this detract? Like, I would want to do like an A/B testing on groups of the population who haven't seen Star Wars and see what do they think of the special version versus the despecialized edition. Like, does it make as much of a difference as I feel that it makes? Or what I almost don't want to admit, but is possibly quite likely, am I just extremely sensitive to the changes because I love the original version so much?
Well,
I would be really curious to know.
I'm going to say, to my credit first, I knew it was the wrong edition well before you did. Like, I was very attuned to some very subtle differences early on. Like you, I was thinking, did the despecializers, have to make some compromises? But I knew something was wrong very quickly. So I'm going to say that to my credit, to big myself up as a Star Wars fan.
Oh, well, yeah, you noticed a scene difference that I would never have noticed.
Yeah, I noticed sort of that the sky was different in a scene and things like that. So I'm thinking, I'm Mr. Star Wars hero for that. But just to bring things back down to earth for everyone, and I'm sure people have guessed this by now already, it was me who cocked up spectacularly. I supplied the wrong file. Because after the film, I went up and checked, did they put a DVD in or something and not use my file? And the DVD they'd bought as a backup was still there in its plastic wrapper. So, and I'd seen them start a computer file, so it could only be the file I supplied. And then it occurred to me what I'd done wrong.
We were talking about it in the car afterward, and you realized that you had done a spotlight search for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And dragged over a file, and apparently you have a copy of the special edition, which is amazing to me.
Well, this is. I don't.
And you've watched it enough that Spotlight thinks it's the version you want.
Well, no, that's
interesting.
That's not the case. But anyway, I did have both the despecialized and that special edition. I don't want to incriminate myself, but I imagine I had the specialized edition once when I very quickly needed a Star Wars scene for research purposes, and and probably just
that's the only reason I have the despecialized edition is as well. I need it for
research purposes,
for fair use research purposes.
So anyway,
I'm working on something like Red Letter Media. It'll never be out, but I'm working on it.
No, but anyway, so I took the wrong version, just copied it across and didn't check. But funnily enough, as I look back over the mistakes I made, there was an opportunity to pick this mistake up. Like an episode of Air Crash Investigation, where you look back over the things that went wrong and you find those moments where some engineer could have done something differently or some pilot could have flicked a different switch. I did have that moment where I could have saved the day, because I did check a few days before just to make sure the file worked. Like, does this video even play? Are the end credits there? Is the start there? And are there scenes in the middle? So I randomly looked at a scene in the middle of the film. And by coincidence, it was the scene where Han Solo has his little interaction with Greedo in the cantina.
Of all the scenes, that one, how interesting.
So I watched and thought, okay, let's watch to see if the shooting happen. And the shooting happened, and it had that, extra blast that was added where Greedo shot first. And I was like, oh, so in the despecialized edition, that's what was there. That's interesting. I never knew that. And thought no more of it. So after telling everyone beforehand that I'd got a good edition and telling Gray and that I stuffed up. And actually, I have not yet apologised to everyone who came for that mistake. So this is my public apology. It's my mea culpa. It was entirely my fault. It was not my intention. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm not surprised by it because I'm rubbish and always stuff things up. But there you go. Sorry, Gray. Sorry, Zoo. Sorry, everyone.
I want to be clear. I'm not going to let you take 100% of the blame, because I was thinking later on. Initially, when I found out it was you, I had this huge oh, thank God, sigh of relief. But later on, I decided no, I should have handled this the same way that I did in a lot of moments when you're teaching, where everybody triple checks stuff. And so I thought I should have checked the file as well. I should have had a backup. So this is also partly my fault. I will not let you take 100% of the blame.
That's kind of you. I mean, I don't agree, but you can have 5%. You can have 5% of the blame if it makes you feel better.
So I will take 40% of the blame. Afterward, the man himself comes up. The movie has ended. We have applauded him. I have to say that was one of my favorite moments from the day. Is the very first scene when Darth Vader steps onto the starship. Everybody spontaneously just let out a big clap, except I think you booed. Did you? Someone booed.
Yeah, I booed because I thought it's like the villain. You've got to boo the villain. Like I thought that was the thing to do, and everyone else was cheering like he was a hero. If they just because he's in the room doesn't mean Darth Vader's not the baddie.
But Darth Vader is awesome. But that was my absolute favorite moment of the whole day, is Darth Vader coming on screen as like the man himself is sitting here, and everybody except Brady cheered. And yes, you're right. Booing is totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then after the movie, he went up to the front and he was taking questions, and it was great.
Yeah, isn't he a charming man?
He is a very charming man. Very charming man.
Yeah. So he actually said, I do not believe this. I do not believe this is true. But he said was only the second time he'd watched the whole film from start to finish.
Yeah, I was squinting my eyes at that answer. I thought, I'm not sure I 100% believe this.
I mean, I can imagine maybe he's just watched it in fractions like a million times, but doesn't ever watch it from start to finish. But
that is quite possible, actually. That is quite possible.
But anyway, that's what he said, and we'll take that as our exclusive line.
Our public policy will be, we watched Star Wars with David Prowse for the second time he had ever seen the film.
Yeah. And he told us some nice little anecdotes and bits and pieces, and I guess we'll leave those for the people in the room to enjoy and savour because they were the lucky ones to be there. And then he posed for a bunch of selfies and signed autographs for people. I saw your wife went up and got a selfie with the man, I noticed.
It was great. You and I got a photo with Darth Vader as well.
Definitely. I wasn't going to miss that opportunity.
Yeah.
And then once David had done his duty for the zoo and for us, he was able to depart and or go spinning off in his TIE fighter, however you want to imagine it. In fact, my favourite part of the day was earlier on when there was a bit of like a traffic jam and we were outside and like I was trying to get out of the way and David was following me on like, he had like this motorised scooter because he's got a leg injury and he was following me and it was like I was being followed by Darth Vader in a TIE fighter.
Stay on target. Stay on target.
So anyway, he and his wife departed. We were very grateful to them. And then we had a chance to hang out with people and also do some selfies. And we did say we were going to do some signatures, and I thought we might have to sign a few posters and things like that. What I did not expect was the incredible amount of technology we were asked to sign.
By my count, I signed 2 Kindles, one with a keyboard, one the beloved Paperwhite, 3 iPads, and 5 or 6 phones.
Yeah.
It was very expensive signing. I was very nervous for this. When someone hands you their phone, I remember this in Alabama as like, oh, ha ha ha, 1 or 2 people had to sign phones. But then to have a line of people who are holding their iPads or phones, it's like, this is a lot of pressure not to mess this up, to do a good signature.
Yeah, because I reckon I must mess up 1 in 3 signatures.
Yeah. Yeah, if I have a video of me doing a time lapse of signing posters, and you can see on there, whatever it is, 1 out of 10 or so, you can see that I have to like bin the poster because I apparently can't sign my own name. But you don't have that option when it's like, well, we have 7 iDevices that you need to sign in a row. You need to get it right. It has to be done right. It's hugely pressureful. Yeah. I'm happy to do it. But boy, is it a lot of stress.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stress. So I felt relief every time someone came up with a poster. It was a bit like, oh, thank God. I'm not going to accidentally ruin possibly one of the most important technological devices in your life with my terrible signature.
I felt like a bit of a pretender signing the Kindle. I think it was clearly a cake because you're the famous Kindle complainer, and like they got you to sign it, and then they're like, "Oh, Brady, will you sign my Kindle too?" And I'm like, "Well, okay," but clearly you just feel bad because I'm here and you've got to get me to do it too now. But anyway, I do it.
You got to catch them all. You got to catch them all. You need both signatures.
All right, yeah, it increases the resale value. People came from very far, and we appreciated all that. Was it Italy? Someone came from Italy. Bunch of people from Scotland.
Yeah, there was someone from Boston as well. It was good. I was doing my best all day long to try and be able to talk to everybody at least for a little bit. And the group was, as always, big enough to be slightly intimidating, but small enough that I felt like, oh yeah, I did get a chance to say hello to everybody, and that is genuinely nice. I mean, as I kept saying to everybody on the day, it is also just a kind of very strange experience from my perspective. But it was really good to be able to meet people and say hi. And I really like the whole format of the day of, oh, we have stuff to do. Like we're just a group of people and, oh, we're going to the zoo and we're going to look at penguins and now we're going to watch a movie. It had a very, very different feeling to something like Alabama, which was an event. So I quite enjoyed today. And I felt, for me anyway, it made it much more natural to just kind of talk to people as we're walking around and doing stuff in the day. So I had a pretty good time, although I was very exhausted by the time it was over.
Yes, and I had an excellent time too. Thank you, everyone. One more time. Thank you, people. Thank you, Zoo. And we look forward to seeing your pictures with CGP Grey the Penguin.
Thanks, everyone.
And also, they did say that they have actually been doing surgery listening to our podcast now as well.
Oh, God.
They say for the past couple of weeks, all my patients have been operated on by Doctors Harron and Gray.
I hope that is not true. I really hope if you're a surgeon that you are not listening to this podcast during surgery. It makes me want to be very serious all the time so we don't accidentally say anything that could be remotely funny to any human, because I'm just imagining a surgeon, with their knife in a precarious location and they're like, oh, ha ha ha, right? And it plunges the knife into sensitive pieces. No, this is no good. Please don't listen to the podcast, surgeons.
Tweet Gray if you're doing surgery right now.
I like that image of the surgeon with the scalpel in one hand and their iPhone 6 in the other hand, trying to awkwardly reach around the screen. And he's like, oh, ha, let me tweet right now. Oh, no, it's no good. It's no good at all.
It's not. Anyway, there you go. I don't think I could do it. Oh, no, I probably could. I probably could listen to podcasts while doing surgery.
Oh, yeah? Are you that confident in your surgery skills?
I can't read if there's audio in the room. Like if a TV's on or there's any talking in the room, I cannot read.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I could probably do heart surgery. I think I've probably listened to about an hour to an hour and a half of it, and I have stopped with no plan to resume. But here's the part where you will be proud of me, Gray.
I'm laughing because just before we started recording this podcast, I was having dinner with my wife, and I made some predictions about what might happen in the Getting Things Done section. And so far, I'm actually kind of on track. I think I'm doing pretty well with my predictions.
Okay.
But tell me what am I going to be proud of?
Did you predict that I would have pages of notes for you?
I would not have predicted that.
Well, your prediction is about to go awry because I went down today and I wrote down loads and loads of things about why I will not be doing my homework.
One of my thoughts is that you would find this book deadly boring. Is that correct?
I think you are understating the case there. Death would have been a welcome respite.
I knew it. I knew it.
Can I just say before I get stuck in that I am aware that this book means a lot to you, and everyone likes different things, and I respect that you like it and what it's done for you. And also, I went into this with some prejudices, which were enhanced as I was reading it. Mm-hmm. And also, I just really don't like homework. Like I know everyone says they don't like homework at school and never did homework at school, but you cannot understand how much I didn't like homework and how much I avoided doing it. Mm-hmm. And the thing that makes me happiest about the fact that I am no longer at school or university is that I don't have to do homework. I don't have to do things in my spare time that I don't like.
Right.
And so it's really, really hard for me to devote that much time to something I don't like.
Right.
So
that's the benefit of being an adult, is you get to make decisions about your own time.
It is wonderful being an adult. Let me get my notes out. Because I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like we should deal with my side of things first.
I am fascinated to talk to you, and I want to clear something before you say anything further.
Go ahead.
Which is, and now this is the part where I have a hard time now remembering what we've said to each other in private and what we've said on podcasts. So I'll try to summarize this. But I know that at some point, maybe in the podcast, maybe in person, we had a little bit of a misunderstanding because I made some remark about how this book won't help you, or I said something along those lines. And
yeah,
I think you took that in exactly the opposite way that I meant it, because as we've discussed, I actually, you get more stuff done than I do. You work more than I do. And I think you are more productive than I am. Like if we compared our days. And so when I made this remark about how this book won't help you, I was actually kind of coming at it from the opposite perspective of this is a book for, I guess now 12 years ago me, who was just totally useless at everything. And I didn't necessarily think that for someone like you, who is already working a lot and is very productive and is in control of their own life, I didn't think that there would be a lot in this book for you. So that is the way that I meant it.
Okay.
That was kind of the perspective that I was coming from.
I have to say, I was never insulted by you saying that. I mean, I took a little bit more along the lines of that because I would not describe myself as someone who is totally in control of my life.
I didn't say totally in control.
So I took it more Brady's a little bit disorganized, but he will always be that way, and no book's going to whip him into shape. And I did not take that as an insult. I took it as actually a stone cold truth. But I certainly was not insulted by it. So you don't need to feel like you upset me in any way.
No, that's not what I meant. But what I just mean is it's
Okay.
It's like there are some people who are more naturally productive than others. And I am very far on one end of that spectrum, and I think you are much further along on the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah.
And so a book like this is very different. Like, people on opposite ends of those spectrum have different problems they're trying to solve.
Are you sort of saying that you feel like this book is maybe like a get healthy diet book, and it would be pointless for like a professional athlete to read it because they're already healthy? Or do you mean it in that context, or?
Yeah. I think that kind of is the case of, like, if you're taking someone who is incredibly unhealthy, they need different advice than someone who is already fit and trying to get fitter, maybe.
Okay. All right.
That's one way to look at it.
All right. Well, you make me feel a bit bad now because I'm about to get stuck into this book. But
you should feel good.
let me take you through the book.
Please
or,
do.
Let me take you through my opinions on the book. Mm-hmm. And these are all based on having not finished it. So I know this is a bit like reviewing a movie and you didn't stay to the end, and it should be taken with that massive grain of salt. All right.
Do you happen to know what chapter you got to? I'm just curious.
No, I don't.
Okay.
And so this is basically just me going through a bunch of prejudices and fleeting impressions, and I'll try and get through it reasonably quickly. Don't take it personally if you like the book.
Don't rush. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear this. I'm so excited.
I'm also very aware this book is massively successful, and I have not written a massively successful book or come up with a massively successful plan for people to organize their lives. So this guy is already ahead of me on the curve.
But that's not how criticism works. I haven't made any movies, but I can still say that a movie sucks.
Let's go. Now, let me start with real first impressions here. This is based almost on the cover of the book and hearing yes. you and other people talk about it beforehand. You're so excited. I don't know whether you're going to get more excited by this or suddenly feel like your world crumbles down. But anyway, let's do it. My first impression about this whole getting things done thing was that it was kind of almost a bit cult-like. Mm-hmm. Because you hear this thing about the GTD system, and people have got like their little abbreviation for it and a hashtag for it. And you get the book and it's got all these quotes all over it, and it's got this sort of the smarmy picture of your leader with his glowing white teeth, like he's coming down with the tablets from on high. It's like, oh, look at him. He's so handsome and smart looking, and he's going to have all the answers for us. So it's a bit like, I don't know, like I said, cult-like. And even on the back of the book, this is a quote from the back of the book. It says, "An entire culture of personal organization that offers to change the way people work and live." Mm-hmm. If someone came up to me on the street with a clipboard and said, "Can I talk to you about an entire culture of personal organization that offers to change the way that you work and live?" I would probably think they were a Scientologist.
Right.
Or they were from some weird organization. Mm-hmm. So this was the first impression I had. And then when I started reading it, a few things sort of started adding to that. Mm-hmm. A few little terms. Hang on. Let me open the book here. Did I? Because I've been scribbling notes in the book. Yeah, it talked about things like being engaged in the moment and things like that. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, what have I got myself in for here? The first chapter, a new practice for a new reality. That sounds like almost religious, doesn't it? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anyway, that was my first impression. That impression subsided a little bit, but not a whole lot. But anyway, let's move on to my next point. Mm-hmm. The next thing that I started feeling very strongly was it reminded me of fad diets. Mm-hmm. Like, how you had things like, I remember, I think it was in the 80s maybe, there was the Pritikin diet, and I remember my mum got really into the Pritikin diet and put us all onto it, and like I think his name was Nathan Pritikin, but that's just me going by memory. I didn't check. But, there was the guru who'd come up with this diet, and it was the answer to all your problems, and if you eat this and eat that and change everything, this will fix your life. And we had the Atkins plan more recently, didn't we? Here's this guy called, I think is Atkins a guy? I don't even know.
I think Atkins was a person, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I'm probably I'm assuming it's a man, actually. I don't know why.
Anyway. If we're going to put down money on cult leaders and their gender, I think the safe bet is usually a man leading a cult.
So we had the Atkins diet, and you've got your 5-2 diets going around, and this just seems like another one, even to the point where it's called, the GTD. So again, this, for someone like me, this results in the putting up of a lot of walls, because I'm not someone who buys into this stuff very easily. And I didn't, and it reminded me a lot of, when everyone was saying you have to read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. This is the book that's going to change your life. And as soon as everyone says this is the book that's going to change your life, I'm like, all right. I'm resistant to one man or woman coming down from Mount Sinai with the tablets telling me this is what's going to fix your life. And this is what this feels like. This is just one person. This is just one person's opinion. And yeah, okay, he's come up with something that works maybe for him and a few other people. But anyway, that was my second impression. The book itself, and you touched on this already, very, very boring. The word I would use to describe it is coma-inducing corporate bollocks. These are some terms. Like this took me 10 seconds to go through the book and find these terms. These are all from the book. Involve ourselves optimally. Integrated life management system. Implementing standard tools and procedures for capturing ideas and input. Hierarchical outline with components and subcomponents. Purpose and principles furnish the impetus. Like, who talks like this? This is not how, and actually, funnily enough, you talk like that sometimes, but I certainly don't, and it really, really turned me off. And I remember when I was listening to it was worse when you're listening to it as an audiobook, and I know that's my fault.
Yeah, I can imagine it's way worse as an audiobook.
It's just like I cannot listen. I cannot. My brain is turning into bubblegum. Stop. And I'm like, it's like, no matter how hard, I'm like straining to pay attention. I want to pay attention, but you're just talking about in such stupid, boring corporate terms. And I think that's a product of who he is. I get the impression he's some consultant who used to spend most of his time fleecing CEOs for huge amounts of money with this, this plan. And obviously very successfully, because obviously it works for some people. But for me, it's like, stop, make it stop. And in the end, I just had to just stop, like I said. I mean, I felt like you could take all the sentences in this book and throw them up in the air and let them land randomly. And the book would read exactly the same to me. It would seem like the same book. That's honestly what it was like. If I was going to make a TV show, like a sketch comedy about some corporate away day where some guy comes and talks to people, it would look like this guy, and all of these terms I would use in my script. This could be a script for my sketch comedy show, it felt like at times. It was just way, way too boring. I'm sorry. Now, I know it's important to be organised, and Lord knows I could be more organised, but I just don't think I am the personality type who is going to be willing to take it from a book and from some other person's plan. And I don't think it is necessary to take it from a book or someone else's plan, And I accept some people, maybe some people are bigger than me and they have the open-mindedness and a man or woman enough to say, you know what, someone else needs to do this for me. Someone else needs to find the way for me. But for me, it goes against everything that I'm about. And it also goes against why I feel like I became a self-employed person. I spent all my life in newspapers and television, having a wonderful job with more freedom than most people could possibly wish for. And still I felt dictated to by demands and deadlines and lists and all these artificially imposed structures. And I really value freedom. And I know he says this is all about creating more freedom for you, but that's just a line. I don't want more constraints and lists and an idea, and I don't want some corporate consultant to be the person who changes my life. I only get one life, and I want to do it my way. I don't want to live David Allen's life. I want to live my life, and that summarizes my main thoughts about this book. I've also made some notes here, but maybe I'll save these. I have made some notes about why I think CGP Grey likes this book. And I don't know if you want to hear that or you want to talk.
I'm loving this. I love it when you're angry, Brady. This is great.
Do you know what?
This is great.
Do you know what? I'm not even the least bit angry. I find this quite cathartic. And do you know what? I know a lot of people are going to have read this book and really like it. And I think a lot of our listeners, particularly our more vocal listeners, are going to be the sort of people who do like this book. And I totally respect that. Mm-hmm. Let me talk to you. I'll tell you why I think you like it.
Okay, yeah. I want to hear this. Why do you think I like it? Actually, can I just very quickly? Did you read or were you listening to the new version or the old version?
I was listening, I believe, to the old version, and I was reading the new version. Okay. Why does CGP Grey like this book? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you'll like this word. Don't take it offensively, because I don't mean it in the offensive way. And also I can't pronounce it. but I think it. Much like I can't pronounce plurality, in case you haven't noticed. But although I think I may have got it right then by accident.
No.
All right. I think you fetishize organizational systems and work methods. Mm-hmm. I think you get really obsessed with them and you really, really love them. Mm-hmm. And I think no matter what you did, I mean, you happen to have a job now where you're very successful and there are a lot of demands on your time and you get a lot of emails. But I think no matter what you did, no matter what job you do, even if you worked in a toothpaste factory and your job was just putting the lids on the toothpaste as it came down the conveyor belt, you would be into this kind of thing and want to have systems and lists and ways to do it and optimize it, because it's just what you are. It's just who you are. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think kind of the journey and the organization brings you as much pleasure and satisfaction at some level than the outcomes. And again, that's completely fine. Much like there are car enthusiasts who just like going for a drive because they get pleasure from automobiles. And it doesn't matter where they're driving. They might just drive around the block or drive around the countryside and come home. They don't care where they went. They got pleasure from the car and from the ride. Mm-hmm. I think your brain derives pleasure from these kind of systems. And there's nothing, again, like I'm the same. I'm the same, but with different things. Like, for example, I love watching a game of baseball because it gives me pleasure. And I usually watch them days after the game. And I will avoid the scores and the outcome, although that's really what it's all about, because I want to watch the game. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong with valuing the experience over the outcomes. Now, you can tell me afterwards if you think I'm right or wrong. But first of all, let me give you 3 pieces of evidence that I am right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Number 1. Uh-huh. And we talked about it earlier. You've started a whole new podcast about all your systems and the way you work. Even though we talk about your work all the time here, that's just not enough. You could talk about this forever. And I'm seriously beginning to think maybe you will. That's piece of evidence number 1. The second piece of evidence is you always say how fascinated you are by people's work systems. You always say it to me. I'm really fascinated by how you work. I'm fascinated by how Destin works. I really want to know how this person does that. Mm-hmm. You're much more fascinated by that than what they create. I don't think you have ever in your life asked me what I'm working on. What's your next video about? I ask you all the time what your next video is about, and you won't tell me, but I ask you all the time. You've never asked me what my next video is about, but you do always ask me how I work, what I'm doing, what my systems are. Uh-huh. That's my second piece of evidence. You're much more focused on systems than outcomes. And the last piece of evidence is your videos. Your videos show this aspect to your personality so brilliantly, because you always say you're not interested in news, you're not interested in politics, you're really disengaged from the real world. Yet you're obsessed with voting and elections. You wanted to talk about the UK election in depth. You didn't know who any of the parties were or any of the politics. You couldn't care less. All you wanted to talk about was the system used to put them in place. Look at your Pope video. Like, as far as I know, you're not particularly interested in Catholicism and you're not a big follower of happenings in the Catholic Church, but you made a fantastic video about the process used to put the Pope in place. All you care about is systems. You're not particularly interested in outcomes. And for that reason, this book, Getting Things Done, is truly, in every sense of the word, grey porn. And it's not just grey porn, it's highly, highly explicit porn. Because every page after excruciating page just goes into incredible detail about lists and workflows and ways to become more effective. Like, I feel dirty touching this book because of how much pleasure I know it gives you. That is the end of me.
I find your evidence for my interest in systems unconvincing.
All right.
I'm actually mostly embarrassed that I think you are right that I have never once asked you what you're working on.
That's fine. That just shows it's what you're interested in. And
yeah, I feel a slight shame as a person. Like, we've discussed sometimes, like, I'm not very good at interpersonal relations, but I realize, like, that's actually quite bad that we've known each other for a long time and never once have I been like, hey, what are you working on? So I'm laughing, but I'm also feeling like horribly guilty and realizing, like, oh yeah, that's right. I am not a good friend sometimes.
You are a good friend. You don't have to ask someone what they're working on in their work to be a good friend. And I would never suggest otherwise. So there we go. Now, this book you obviously have read before a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But because there's this new edition out at the moment where he's updated it for a whole new generation of mini greys to enjoy. Mm-hmm. Have you finished your second, or I don't know how many times have you read it?
I was trying to think that I would say, this is probably the fourth time I've read the book. Right. I was trying to remember. It must have been like 2005 or 2004 when I first came across it, when I was first training as a teacher, whenever that was. So let's just say about 10 years ago. That's when I would have first found it. And yeah, I know I've read it a couple times since then.
How did you find out about it? Like, how did it get onto your radar?
I don't remember specifically how I came across Getting Things Done. And I wish I did. I wish I remembered how I found it.
It's like your origin story, Gray.
Basically, I was really like falling apart in my teacher training years because I was not an organized person. And a thing that had always seemed like an advantage, which was, as a kid, I kind of just like floated through high school without a lot of work. And college was a bit of a wake up call, but it wasn't like enough of a wake up call. And so I sort of floated through that as well. And then suddenly it was when I was doing my teacher training, it was like, wow, I'm not prepared for this and like all of the things that I need to keep track of. And I just remember very well, there was this huge binder of like 500 things that you need to have pieces of evidence for in order to be qualified as a teacher. And that was the kind of thing, like, I was having a very hard time keeping track of all of that. And I know I was reading books on productivity, like, oh God, there must be something here that can help me. And I remember reading a bunch of books that I thought were just really awful. I can still remember what some of them were. I was just like, oh, this book is useless. This book is terrible. Mm. And at some point I came across Getting Things Done after I had read a bunch of books where I felt like all of them were just totally unhelpful. And this was the book that I did find helpful. And then
what was different? What was different about
it? So the reason I asked before about if you read the old version or you read the new version is that the old version is definitely dated, but I think it's actually better than the new version. The new version has been updated in a way that I find it is much less actionable. And I have to say, the one thing, like, you are totally right that I am a systems person. I am very fascinated by systems, and your piece of evidence were dead on. But you are wrong about the pleasure that I derive from this book. I have always found this book kind of boring. It's actually not the case that I'm like, oh boy, all of these pages are great. And when I was reading the newer version, I actually, because I have the old one is on my Kindle and I was highlighted up for a review that I was going to write. I went back and forth a few times to look at how some of the passages had changed. I was like, oh god, it got boringed up here. Like they took out some of the specificity and added more of this kind of jargon.
Yeah.
David Allen has a lot of business jargon.
Yeah.
If you don't read books that are business books, this kind of thing can be death. I tend to read like a disproportionate number of books that could broadly be classified as business, and they all have a kind of word poison in them that you have to shuffle through. Like even a book that I read recently, which was probably one of the best versions of this that there can be, which is Creativity Inc. by the guy who runs Pixar, which is very interesting. An entire book about the system of how Pixar produces movies, but it suffers from the same kind of like dude at the top who's a manager and talks about horizons and vision stuff, and it's like, oh god.
Oh, that's disappointing, Greg, because I actually really wanted to read that book.
You will enjoy Creativity Inc. a million times more than you enjoy getting things done. But it still has a little bit of that, like, this is a book written by a business dude. This one little thing, I'm actually just looking at the notes here. Like, there's some stuff that I always find hilarious in getting things done. And here, I have the highlight here. Let me go to this little page. This was in the first edition. But it shows, like, David Allen is living in a different world. So there's this section which has it is a, quote, typical list of things you might want to do someday. And on that typical list are get a sailboat, take a watercolor class, take a balloon ride, build a wine cellar, spend a month in Tuscany, publish your memoir. It's like, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting collection of things. And earlier he uses an example of the kind of problem that you might have to solve where you have inherited $6 million from a relative and need to figure out how to disperse this money. It's like, oh yes, we all face these problems, David Allen. There's a whole bunch of examples of here where it's like you can feel the world that this person is coming from.
Just hanging out with CEOs and chairmen and...
Yeah. I was one of those nerds who was on the chess club. That's the kind of nerd that I was in high school.
Okay. So what would you think if it was announced that chess was under consideration for the Olympic Games?
Well, aren't there already a bunch of just weird sports in the Olympics?
Yeah, but none of them I would describe as purely mental. All of them, no matter what you think about them, I would say have a physical component to them. Even if it's something like, shooting, where the people are quite stationary and sometimes don't look like amazing specimens. It's still it's still a physical thing they're doing. Chess is different unless you count moving pieces on a board as physical activity, but it's not.
I mean, how heavy are the pieces?
Yeah. So I think chess would be a departure. I can't think of another sport currently in the Olympics that is comparable to chess.
I'm looking at the list. Like I basically just Googled for weird Olympic sports, and they have the ones from the 2012 London Olympics. And yeah, you're right. Shooting. Wait, what's dressage? I don't know what dressage is.
Dressage is horses. It's kind of like sort of dancing horses in a way. It's called dressage.
Oh, dressage. I'm sorry. Dressage. Mm-hmm. Okay, but yeah, even that's physical. Oh, they have the speed walking, which Henry did an excellent video on for the 2012 Olympics, which was good. I'll put the link in the show notes.
I used to be pretty good at that.
Speed walking?
As a junior, I used to go to like little athletics, and I once got the state qualifying time in speed walking, and if I got it a second time, I would have gone to the state championships.
Yeah, but you would have just failed on a more glorious stage had you gone to the state championships.
Exactly. Well, my second attempt to get a qualifying time I really hyped it up, and then I failed. So
you are correct. Even the weird ones, trampoline is on here. Trampoline for some reason. They are all some kind of physical thing.
Well, also the Olympic motto is faster, higher, stronger.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. You could have like faster, maybe you could get a bit of chess, maybe. You could have a pretty onerous clock on them, maybe. Or
speed chess is really fun. Speed chess is very fun. That is the most enjoyable way to play a game of chess. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like the Olympics are just so arbitrary anyway. I can't get worked up about this if they would say, "Oh, yes, we're going to put chess in the Olympics." Like, oh, fine, whatever. It's all of these sports are arbitrary assumptions and limits. What difference does this one make?
I think it would diminish the Olympics if they made chess a sport in the Olympics. And I love chess, so don't think I'm anti-chess.
Why would it diminish the Olympics, though?
It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel like what the Olympics are. And don't get me wrong, some of the other sports that have been getting into the Olympics from time to time have been pretty questionable in my opinion as well.
Ping pong?
Chess would be...
Chess is over the line.
It's a bridge too far. But I don't know. I just wondered what you'd think, and it sounds like you're indifferent.
Well, again, all sports seem really arbitrary to me. I mean, even the things. This could sound awful. Even the things like when they go, "Oh, athlete X is in trouble because they used steroids to compete in this sport." I often think, why are steroids not allowed? Aren't we trying to see like what can you push the human body to at the absolute maximum? I don't understand why steroids aren't allowed if that's what we're going for. We're trying to see how fast can a man run around in little circles.
Yeah.
Why aren't steroids allowed?
Well, I can think of 2 reasons, but yeah.
What are your 2 reasons?
Well, one is it could become an arms race of sorts, and it would come down to
Well, of course it would.
a race of technology. And you could argue, well, okay, it's like that now with training methods, but
Yeah,
that's one reason.
That's
The second
exactly what I
reason-
would say, yeah.
The second reason, I think, is the safety of the competitors. If you open those floodgates, they will start pushing themselves to very limits, and people will start dying for their pursuit of Olympic gold medals. And I don't think we should have rules that encourage that. I understand the argument. I when I'm being a devil's advocate and mischievous, I will say exactly what you just said. But in reality, come on.
No, I'd be fine with it. Actually, okay, what they should do, here's my plan for the Olympics. You listening, Olympic Committee? We should divide the Olympics into 2 groups. Augmented humans and then like a Greek style, no augmentation whatsoever Olympics.
And would they have to compete naked like in Greek times?
Yeah, because your little sports shorts, if technology keeps progressing far enough, well, those are going to be nano shorts. You can't trust them.
So you'd have nude chess. You could have nude chess at the Olympics.
Yeah, that's right. You break chess into two tracks.
Yeah.
One of which is you can use as many nootropics in your brain. You can do whatever you want to try to augment the human physical form.
And can they use the internet to look up moves and stuff?
Yeah, why not? Let's try to make this the best chess game that's ever happened between 2 humans.
Well, it would become between 2 computers then, wouldn't it? But yeah, all right.
No limits. The 2 of you are sitting there. This is a chess game. This is going to be the best chess game that can possibly occur.
Right.
And then the non-augmented track.
The nude chess.
Yeah, the nude chess. They'd have to be sitting there naked.
Yep. Moving their rooks.
Yeah, they couldn't use any steroids or anything. But yeah, this is my plan.
All right.
I think this works well for all sports. You have people on steroids, running races or whatever, and then you have people without shoes running races. I think this is the future for the Olympics.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope to see this implemented.
Well, I don't know. With these like IOC and FIFA and stuff like that, you got enough money, anything's possible.
Yeah. I guarantee you'd get higher ratings if you did this, Olympic Committee.
Maybe. I don't know.
How could you not have more people would tune in for one naked Olympics of just here is what a human body unaugmented can do. And then think of how spectacular the Olympics would be if you allowed all kinds of craziness. Just whatever you can do. We're just trying to make a human
Like mutants
run
and
as
stuff
fast.
like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can genetically breed creatures to just be the perfect sports people. I don't see how this could possibly go wrong. I think it would be an amazing spectacle.
It would be an amazing spectacle. I'm not sure that the nude Olympics would rate. It would rate better in a lot of European countries. I think Americans would have problems with it. Well, Americans are a bit funny about nudity, whereas in Europe it's like, c'est la vie, whatever.
Americans are a little prudish, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, naked chess, I guess that's where this is going.
Yep, I'm totally up for it.
I will not play naked chess with you.
Really? I'm thinking of all sorts of cool jokes, but I'll let it go for now. All right. Thank you for that. I didn't expect to go down the nude chess path, but hey, that's what it's all about.
There we go.
There was a really interesting article in The Guardian, which Gray will link to, no doubt. It was all about computers doing journalism. At the time I read it, I was really excited. I put the link in the notes and told Gray we had to talk about it. I've pretty much now forgotten what was in it. But it's worth a read. You have read it too, haven't you?
Yes, I just read it. I just read it right before the show. Let me just pull.
Oh, see, that's smart. That's what I should have done.
Yeah, that's what the show notes are. That's why I go through the show notes right before we're about to do the thing. Otherwise, it all falls out of my brain.
I was asleep right before the show started. I can't be reading before the show. That was sleep time.
Yes, that's true. The thing that the show, or the thing that this article talks about, a couple points. It's largely talking about a company called Narrative Science, which is one that I don't know if I mentioned them by name, but I was talking about them in the Humans Need Not Apply video. And broadly speaking, they are a company that is working on algorithms that can produce human readable material of all forms. And so one of the things that this article is talking about in particular is computer algorithms that can write up a story about what happened in sports games. But their focus is broader than that. They want to be able to feed an algorithm a bunch of data from a company and have it produce a quarterly report in the same way a human would. This is all the stuff that they're working on. But there were two points that I wanted to bring up, because whenever you mention this stuff, people just push back on it. When they show people articles written by humans versus written by the algorithms, people rate them slightly differently in terms of which ones are friendly and accessible or informative and authoritative.
Yeah.
But the key here is that there is not some huge difference where people say, oh, this is obviously written by a machine and it's crap. People don't, like, everybody thinks that they can tell the difference, but they really can't when you put them in a double blind situation, even if they rate things slightly differently. So yes, they said, oh, the human written ones were a little bit more friendly and the computer written ones were a little bit more authoritative.
Yeah.
But this is the same thing. Like in the video that I made, I mentioned about the music, and I say, oh, this music is written by a computer algorithm. And everybody writes back, oh, I could totally tell it was written by a computer because it sounds repetitive and blah, blah, blah. But when you, again, if the Emily Howell is the name of the computer program that writes the music, when you do it with double blind and you don't tell people which one's written by the human and which one's written by the computer, people can't tell. Everybody just thinks they can tell once you tell them what the answer is. And this is why I mentioned in the video when I did that almost certainly anybody who reads newspapers has already read something that was summarized by a computer algorithm. Like this is already happening, and people just underestimate how good this stuff is. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to fly under the radar of people telling the difference between a human and a computer.
I'll tell you what, Gray. There is one. I do have one issue here. It seems to me, at this stage, for obvious reasons, the real strength of these algorithm-written articles seems to be in the sphere of things which are very quantitative. Business reports,
that's why they're
sports
using
games.
Sports games.
Because I mean, I could just look at a baseball box score or a financial report and write an article having not been at the game. Okay, so that's fair enough. But when they do these double-blind tests and they show you two match reports from a game of baseball, the thing that the people doing the double-blind tests don't have and didn't do was go to the game. So it's very hard to know how good a report of the game it is if you didn't also see the game. For example, say I went to a game. Say I went to the Yankees versus the Red Sox. And the Yankees won 3-2, and so-and-so hit a home run, and there was a double, and this pitcher had this record. Billy, the journalist who wasn't at the game, could write a report, and the computer could write a report, and maybe someone couldn't tell the difference. But what if halfway through the game, Derek Jeter stood on second base and took off his trousers and painted his legs pink and started doing cartwheels. That's not going to be in the box score. That's not going to be anywhere. So when the computer writes the report of all the noteworthy things that happened during the game, that's going to be completely omitted. Someone who is actually at the game, I think they're probably going to start their report with that and give very little to the actual score of the game because it was such a remarkable thing that happened that is what needs to be reported on. And that's an extreme example. But I just think the computers and the algorithms sometimes, miss the wood for the trees or whatever you want to call it. They don't really know what's interesting. And sometimes you can't be taught what's interesting because the thing that's interesting is something that's never been seen before. Mm-hmm. And that's the value of reporting. And, a computer will never know what the emotion of the crowd was. The computer can't know what noise the crowd made when Alex Rodriguez came out to bat. Did they boo him? Did they cheer him? Did they start off booing him but then cheer him when he hit the home run? All of these subtleties and things that matter to humans are very hard to pick up with a computer.
Oh, yeah. And when I talk about this stuff, I completely agree with you that in very, very many domains, the best human is still always going to be able to crush the computer today. There's no doubt about it. I could send Brady to a cricket game and I can send an algorithm to the cricket game and Brady's going to write a way better article about that cricket game than the computer possibly can. But I think that all of this stuff is we're looking at the toddler version of what these computers and these algorithms can do. I don't doubt that at some point in the future, you could feed just the straight video of a computer game you could feed just the straight video of a sports game to a computer and the computer could write out a story about it. I think that's going to be able to happen sometime because we already know that humans can do that. And unless you think that there's something magically different about the human brain, I think anything that a human can do, a computer algorithm will eventually be able to do at some point. And we're just looking at the very, very beginnings of all of this stuff. What do you think about that?
I remember when I was reporting, sometimes something would happen like a tragedy. I remember a really bad tragedy once happening, and a little boy died, and I had to write a story about it. Mm-hmm. And the family let me come to the house and sit in the room with them and talk to them for a couple of hours. And a lot of things happened in that room, and that coloured and painted the way that I wrote the story about the tragedy of this boy dying. And I just can't see in the next hundreds and hundreds of years that a computer could have got from that what I got from it. I can't see it, right? And I know they're going to get good, but I just can't see a computer thinking to ask the things that I would have asked and looked at the places I would have looked and taken in the subtleties I took in. And maybe one day they will. And also maybe I was pretty ham-fisted and didn't write the final story very well anyway. But I just can't see it. I can't. I can read. If all I want to know is who won the baseball game, I don't care if it was written by some 17-year-old intern watching it on TV or an algorithm. And if the algorithm's a bit cheaper for the new service, then okay, I only want the score anyway. But I just can't see journalists being replaced by computers. Journalists won't be replaced by computers certainly before airline pilots and things like that, because there's just things computers can't do. And the human brain is quite unique in some of those abilities, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. The unique part is a bit different. You pick an example which is the most intensely human example there can possibly be, right? And a bereavement and another human in the room. So I will grant you that on the list of jobs that computers are doing, that little moment there is one of the farthest down the lines you can possibly have.
Yeah.
right? But that is not 99% of what newspapers are doing.
Yep.
Like that is shockingly rare. And my in the economy of these things, my concern is always people talk about the things that machines can't do, but you have a problem long before the last few things that humans do fall.
Yeah.
Also, when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, I would actually bet that a machine could do that job. That if you're talking 500 years in the future, you could have a robot that looks as good as a human that can be more empathetic than a human could be. But at that point, you're talking about just science fiction kind of futures. But if you're saying never in 10,000 years can humans create a convincingly human machine, I'm going to go no on that, because otherwise I feel like you're just saying there's something magic about humans. And I don't see that stage. Like I don't go along with
Gray,
with
I think there is
part of it.
something magic about humans.
See, this is where we just have a fundamental disagreement. If you believe in magic, I can't unargue you.
I
from
don't mean magic as in Harry Potter. I mean something.
Do you mean magic as in something that is outside of the physical constraints of the universe?
No.
Okay. Then I don't think that it is impossible to imagine completely simulating a human brain in a computer. Like, do you think that that's an impossibility, that in 10,000 years of human progress, we'd never be able to do something like that?
I don't know.
See that, and this is what I mean, is I think that you could simulate a human brain, that it ultimately comes down to neurons and electrical connections, and you can reproduce that inside a computer. And so that to me is why I can get to the argument of, if you can simulate a human brain, and there is a human brain simulation project that the European Union is working on right now, if you can do that, then it's at some stage it's game over for humans, physical meat-based humans being the best at everything. Because once you get a brain on increasing computing power, you can start simulating a human brain at 1.1x the speed of a regular brain. And then 2x and 5x and 10x and 100x. And that's why, I mean, I even think like stuff that I do, intensely creative work that is, it's singular in a way. Like there's no reason that my brain couldn't be perfectly simulated, or that you couldn't just like the stuff that I used to do with genetic algorithms back in my university days of, I mean, this has like vast moral, ethical implications, but just go with me for a second. You can do the kind of thing where you spontaneously create 10,000 simulated human brains and have them produce artwork and see how other simulated brains react to them. And you could create amazing works of art that humans would find better than anything that has ever been created, because you know what gets reactions out of people. And that's why I think all of this is eventually, at some point, machines will be better than humans at everything.
Great.
That's not
take
today.
Away, take away the can you tell the difference thing for a moment, okay? If a new podcast came out that was made by a bot that basically just crawled all the podcasts in iTunes, found all the best bits and what works and doesn't work, and created a simulated two dudes talking, where they weren't two dudes, they were just two Macs talking to each other in a human voice, just talking crap about whatever like we do, but it was just drawn upon all the stuff that was out there that it could find and what worked best. Would that be a podcast you would get a lot of pleasure from, knowing that it wasn't two dudes?
Okay, so here's the thing. You're proposing something that sounds terrible, which is just trying to do something today. But can I imagine a podcast that is between two computers talking to each other being better than our podcast? I can imagine that being the case at some point. Because why do I listen to podcasts? I listen to podcasts to be entertained. I listen to podcasts because I like the personalities of the people who are talking, even if I don't care what they're talking about.
Oh, you said personalities. That's interesting. I didn't think you'd say that, but because that's a crucial thing to me. But
yeah, but that's entirely true. There are several podcasts where I don't care or even understand what the people are talking about sometimes, but I listen because I like the personality of the person talking. But it ultimately comes down to me that my personality and your personality are the result of neurons firing in a particular order, in a sequence in our brains. And that's why I can say that, yes, I can imagine an algorithm creating an enjoyable podcast to listen to with voice synthesis that gets good enough, because I just don't think that there's anything special about the brain. Like my personality is the way it is because of the neurons and the order that they're connected in my mind. It's not magic. That's what I mean when I say magic is some kind of other not reproducible thing. And that's what I mean by that.
But does the free will at the other end, does the fact people listening to us know that we're doing this by a free will add to their pleasure? Because let me ask you this.
Are you trying to okay, you go ahead.
Let me ask you this, Gray. Mm-hmm. This is a purely hypothetical question, and therefore you should feel safe answering it, because this technology does not exist and will not exist in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. But if the technology did exist for there to be really, really good simulated human beings and customized to your every whim, would you be happier with a robot wife than with your wife? Could they make a better suited wife for you than your wife?
I'm going to stop you right there. Yeah. This is an argument in my marriage, and my wife thinks that we have a no holodecks rule, and I think that we don't. And I think that this is not necessarily a not within our lifetime kind of argument. I can imagine computer simulations taking off and having a holodeck-like situation. So again, to me, this just always comes down to first principles of if you can completely simulate a human mind, there's nothing that humans do that you can't do better ultimately with machines. And the holodeck thing about, if a holodeck or virtual reality exists in some ways, I'm pretty convinced that is an end of civilization moment. And the Fermi paradox?
I don't know.
I have that right. Yes, I think I think I have the name right off the top of my head.
It's from Enrico Fermi.
Yeah, it is the question about why haven't we been visited by aliens? Right. That you can run a calculation that basically says, no matter how low you think the probability of intelligent life developing is, the number of stars and the number of planets is so astronomical that there has to be intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. And I go along with that hypothesis. Like, I believe in aliens, not that they have visited the Earth, but I believe that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. But the paradox is that if there is intelligent life, you can also run the numbers and say that we are probably later to the civilization stage than other people. So why haven't aliens actually visited Earth? Or why haven't we found any messages from aliens? This is the Fermi paradox, is why does it seem like there are fewer aliens than everything that we know about science tells us there should be? And there are many questions about why there are many answers to this possible question. And two of them which relate to our current question is that one, that intelligent civilization ends up in some kind of self-destructive loop.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, that once you get smart enough, there are mistakes that you can make that are very probable that are also civilization-ending mistakes.
Yeah.
And so we used to think nuclear weapons were one of these things. It seems like we're mostly past that, but you still have the possibility of destroying the Earth. But the answer that I actually think seems like it might be one of the most relevant, and I read this on, I think, edge.org a while back, is that the late game of civilization is intelligent life creates simulations that are better than the actual physical universe. And so entire civilizations just say, we're done with the real universe. And that because the virtual universe can be designed in a way that is vastly more attractive than the real universe.
So they sort of basically say, should we go and explore the stars or just play Call of Duty for the next 10,000 years?
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it's a thing that sounds really trivial. But what I think you have to imagine is, it's not like it's Call of Duty, but you talk about something which is almost irresistibly attractive in a simulated universe because it is designed to hit every single one of your buttons. And the possibility as well is that you don't even know that you have put yourself inside of an amazing simulation, right? If that's what your brain needs, like that's what you do. And so Brady, you get to live the life of a 18th century explorer, and that's just the perfect thing for your brain, and you just love it all day long. But part of the simulation is that you don't even know that you're in the simulation.
Well, if you don't know, fair enough. Okay. If you don't know you're in a simulation, well, how can I argue with that? But the thing I think is there's something very powerful about the free will thing. So even if I made X30 Uber Robot 10,000 that looked amazing and just acted and did everything you want, that still wouldn't be the ideal wife for you, because you know that it has no choice but to be your wife. There's something very powerful about someone who doesn't have to say yes, saying yes. And when you asked your wife to marry you, or even something as even simpler when you first tried to kiss her, maybe, the fact that she didn't have to let you, but she did, is such a powerful drug and means so much to us. And I don't think robots and simulations give us that. Okay, if we don't know, if we're in the simulation too and we don't know that they were making a choice, well, how can I argue with that? But if we do know, I think having that taken away from us is a huge, huge sacrifice and will be a huge loss. And I think that is always very motivating. And that's where my problem with RoboWife comes from.
Okay, but here's the thing. We're coming to another fundamental problem, which is that I think free will doesn't exist. I think this idea that people are making decisions is not real either.
Okay.
Right? That it feels that way, but it isn't. Like free will is an incredibly convincing illusion,
right?
But that it's not real. That I feel like I make choices, but I have no ability to explain, like, who is the me that made this choice? Like, why did I choose one thing or the other? I think if you pay attention to the way your mind operates, it's easy to see that you have a feeling of being in control without actually being in control. And this is one of the reasons why I tend to use a lot of language where I describe, I'll say something like, my brain does X. Because I don't know, I feel like I'm very aware of this distinction between how things feel and how things actually are.
Okay, great. Well, let's say you and I don't have free will.
Yeah.
I still want to call what we have free will light, because I think it is something different to what a robot has. So even if it is all predetermined by the arrangement of whatevers, I still think it's different to the robot thing, and it means more to me than the robot thing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and the thing with a computer is that the nature of what it does is laid bare. The computer, I mean, a computer in a way is like a very complicated flour mill. You can go into a flour mill and you can look at all of the pieces and how they move around, and you can see that this is a machine that just does something. That the flour mill doesn't have any choice in processing flour. It just does it because of all the mechanical parts. And ultimately, a computer is the same thing. It doesn't have any choice in what it does, but it's a much more complicated version. You can't look at a computer and see how it works, but you know conceptually, okay, a computer someone has programmed this. It's running through code. It might be running through millions and millions of pieces of code, but it's still just operating on inputs and getting outputs. And if you understand all of the inputs, you can perfectly predict all of the outputs. I think that humans are just one level above that in terms of complication. That if you perfectly understand all of the inputs going into a person, you could, in theory, perfectly predict all of the outputs. And we can't do that right now because it's just too complicated. In the same way that when a person looks at a computer, most of the time they can't perfectly predict how it does everything because it's too complicated. But there's no fundamental difference here. It just feels different because it's complexity squared. But I think from the first principles, it's not any different at all.
So, Gray, when your wife comes home from work and brings you like a surprise present, or I phone you up and say something nice to you, like compliment you.
You've never done
No, okay, I was just using a hypothetical there. Let's go back to when your wife does something nice. When you're sitting
Why
next...
don't you bring me flowers, Brady?
when you're sitting next to your wife and she strokes your arm or gives you a gift or says something nice to you, does that give you no pleasure? Do you just sit there and think, well, you had no you had no choice but to say that. You had no choice but to do that because you were predestined to do it, and you must just sit there and go, well, that means nothing to me because the universe decided that. Or do you think, wow, she just did something nice because she loves me? Which like how do you gain any enjoyment from anything if you think it's all that like that?
But
where does the pleasure come from?
These are two totally separate questions.
It's not a separate question. When your wife strokes your arm and smiles at you, where does the pleasure come from for you if you think that was predetermined?
But here's the predeterminedness of it doesn't make any difference. You also start getting into just absolutely bizarre questions here of that. Like like my wife can make me happy, but she makes me happy because of the very structure of my brain in perceiving happiness. Do you know what I mean? Like just think for a second. Like here's a bizarre thought exercise for people. I've done this with a few people in real life. It's a bit hard sometimes to think about, but whoever you are, listener, think about someone that you find attractive, right? Imagine their face in your mind. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about this too much, you can realize, wait, there's nothing intrinsic about the face that you're imagining that actually is attractive. The whole notion of attractiveness is something that exists in your brain. It doesn't exist on the person's face, right? You are not perceiving attractiveness on someone. Their face is coming into your mind, and because of the way that your brain is structured, you perceive it as attractive. But it's not a thing that's really there. What you're really looking at is a thin layer of meat on top of some bone, right, with some watery sacs in the middle that look out at you as well.
Wow.
That's what a face really is.
Great, that's lovely. Was that part of your wedding vows?
Yes, but it doesn't change the fact that you perceive it as being beautiful or being attractive. Right? These two things can be the same. Attractiveness does not exist in other people, but you subjectively perceive a thing as attractive. But here's why. I perceive things as attractive because of the structure of the way my brain is set up. And that's true for absolutely everybody. And here's a great example. When a dog looks at a person, they don't see that person as being beautiful or attractive because they're a dog. Their brain is wired differently so that they look at other dogs and think, boy, that dog is really attractive. But it's nothing about the dog, right? It's everything about the person's brain or the dog's brain. So that's why these things are separate questions about how can you derive pleasure if the universe has no free will. It's like things that make me happy because of the way my brain is structured. This is what I've said before on the podcast sometimes of like interest. There's no explaining why some things are interesting to people and other things are not. I mean, even we just talked about it earlier. Why am I interested in container ships, but I have no interest in airplanes? There's no explanation for that. There's no reason for that. It has something to do with the very structure of the way that my neurons happen to be connected, which has everything to do with the way that I happen to have grown up and my genetics and all this stuff. But I'm not in control of that. I don't choose to be interested in container ships, but not interested in airplanes.
Yeah, but Gray, you talk like you're on a higher plane than that. I agree. I just have this basic structure of wiring, and I find that person good looking and that person not,
Right.
etc. But my wiring seems to be quite happy to let me live with various illusions, or what you would describe as illusions. But you seem to say, "No, I don't fall for those illusions. I'm above that. Like, I don't think that my wife chose to bring me flowers. I don't think that, because I know better. And therefore, if you know better, see, I do think my wife chose to bring me flowers, you see. But if you know better and you think yours didn't, I think you're one step further away from being pleased by it. Or are you?
There's no knowing better here. There's no knowing better here at all. And this is always the argument when you start talking about free will. It's like there's two different things going on. Do people make choices? And I think that the answer is no. That ultimately people are deterministic. But then there's a whole separate thing, which is the layer in which you subjectively live your life, which feels like you make choices. And that's why let's say science tomorrow came out with a study that said we proved for 100% sure that free will doesn't exist. Yeah. We got out a big enough microscope and we looked and went, it turns out it's nothing but gears below the quantum level. Right? This is just all gears and springs.
Yep.
And then the day after that, scientists come out and say, actually, we discovered, no, for 100% sure, there is free will because we looked at the bottom of the universe and below the gears, there's pixie dust that's magic.
Yeah.
And so free will exists.
Yeah.
I don't think anything about the way I live my life changes on either of those 2 days. Both of those days, I have the same reaction of, that's interesting. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the subjective level in which you live your life is so all-encompassing that the mechanics behind it don't really matter. Is it free will or is it pixie dust? Or is it a mechanistic universe? It doesn't make any difference in my daily life. It doesn't change anything in how I relate to people or how people relate to me. I don't think it really matters.
Let me ask you this then. When something nice does happen, I keep clinging to this scenario of your wife bringing you flowers home, right?
Yeah.
You say that day to day you're just like me, and you this illusion of choice and things helps bring you pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. How long for you is it until that illusion is snatched away and your intellect takes over and says, "Oh, silly emotional grey, of course you realise she didn't choose to bring you those flowers"? How often do those thoughts come to you? How often is the rug pulled away from the illusion in someone like you? Every day, once a year?
The answer to that is never and always. Right? It's because I never think this way. Because what I was trying to say before is it doesn't matter.
For a guy that never thinks that way, you talk about it a heck of a lot.
But what I mean is, in your personal human reactions, it doesn't matter if my wife does something nice out of free will or out of a deterministic universe. It doesn't make any difference from my perspective which of those is true. Like I personally think that we live in a universe where there is no free will, but it doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
Like it doesn't diminish acts of niceness to think that they have not been done by free will. I think this is the argument you're making, and maybe you'll be a bit more sympathetic to this. The argument you're making to me sounds very similar to the argument I sometimes hear from people who are not sciencey people, who say that, don't you think learning about a rainbow makes a rainbow less beautiful? That's a bit what I think this argument is similar to. Yeah. And I would bet your opinion is the same, that knowing more about a rainbow doesn't make looking at a rainbow any less of an enjoyable experience. If anything, it might make the experience more enjoyable. I don't think knowing that we live in a universe without free will makes anything more enjoyable, but I certainly don't think it detracts.
I don't agree. Maybe this says...
Do you think knowing about the rainbow does make it less beautiful?
I remember as a child when I would see a rainbow and I still believe there was a pot of gold, or I still believe maybe we would get to the point where I could see it hitting the ground. just being captivated and completely charmed and in love with rainbows. And seeing a rainbow was like a life-changing experience. And as we would drive along, I would pray that we would get to the point where it actually touches the ground, because I've never seen the point where a rainbow actually touches the ground. Now that I realise that those things don't exist, I still think rainbows are very beautiful and will get out my smartphone and take a picture of it. But it has nowhere near the effect it used to have on me when I thought there was a pot of gold at the end.
Yeah, but you're also talking about when you were just an idiot child. I mean, that's okay. Can you compare something where you're an adult? You're not a little kid who believes in leprechauns. I mean, I think you're comparing two wildly different things. Is there anything
I've used an extreme example, but I think it still makes the point that I don't agree with this whole sciencey argument that's always made that once you know the truth of what's going on, it's more beautiful or more captivating. I agree it's more interesting, and I love knowing how things work and knowing all the details and then telling all those details to people. But I do think there is a degree of... there is some nice things that get stripped away with that we have to accept. That's part of becoming an adult and becoming knowledgeable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just unconvinced here. I don't know. We're getting off now into an argument about does science make things less beautiful? Which, of course, I'm gonna come on to the side of no, it does not. But
it makes things less magical, and because magic isn't real,
magic is made up.
Yeah, and because magic
of course it makes things less magical.
Yeah, but things that are made up can still bring great pleasure. You love Lord of the Rings, and I hate to tell you this, Gray, none of that's real, but you still get pleasure from escaping into that fantasy. And I think there's beauty in fantasy and beauty in things that aren't real. You like Star Wars. That's not real either, Gray, but you still like it.
Yeah, I know that, but your metaphors, they break my brain sometimes, Brady. They really do.
There's nothing, what I'm saying is there is pleasure to be gained from things that aren't real. And believing that there's a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow can bring more pleasure, I believe, sometimes than understanding what's happening with the light being refracted and bouncing here, there, and everywhere.
Okay, but what kind of crazy argument is that? Because Lord of the Rings is written as a kind of alternative history, like a lost mythology for England. This is part of why it was created. Would you say
Don't
that it
cling
would be
to
better?
Lord of the Rings? Just use fiction in general.
But would you argue that we should, instead of teaching actual history, teach Lord of the Rings because
hang
it's
on.
way
Now
more
you're being
enjoyable
unfair.
and magical
you're being
than
unfair.
actual history?
Now you're being unfair. I didn't say that we should be teaching in school that there's pots of gold at the end of the rainbow. That's not what I said at all.
Okay, yes, but I'm genuinely not understanding what point you're trying to make.
I'm saying once you know the truth, once science strips bare the truth, that doesn't mean it's nicer or prettier or more enjoyable or more beautiful.
What I'm trying to say is that knowing the truth about a thing doesn't detract from it. I don't think it detracts.
Well, I think in some ways it does detract from it. I think it does detract from it. And I'm not saying it means we shouldn't do it. And I do it more than anyone. I make a career doing it, making videos about how things really work. I don't make videos. I have made videos about how rainbows work. I have not made videos about leprechauns being at the end of the rainbow. But I got more pleasure from rainbows when I didn't know the truth. I'm glad I know the truth, and I wouldn't change it for $1 million because I'm someone who has to know the truth.
Right.
But there was a lovely pleasure I gained when I didn't know the truth, and I almost feel more fondly about those times.
Okay, so to try to bring it back, you would say that if we knew for sure tomorrow that there was no free will, that the universe was deterministic, that would make you sadder.
I would be glad I knew the truth, and I would make videos about it, and I would always be at pains to tell my friends the truth and tell them, look, guys, this is the way it is. Science has proven it. But I would think more fondly of the time when I thought that my wife chose to marry me. I would wish that had been the case, but I would accept the truth and adopt the truth wholeheartedly.
I think this is now just coming down to the fundamental difference with us. Whereas I don't have that reaction and you do. So here we are then. Just like I think you should never get an Apple Watch. I think you should not think for too long about the nature of choice in the universe.
I seem to be doing everything correctly.
Oh, yeah?
Touch wood. But not too often because you get upset when I touch the wood.
I get upset when you touch your wood.
Don't stop it. You're not normally that rude. You have got a rude streak sometimes, Gray.
I do not.
You do. You have a naughty side.
The word naughty is one of these cultural differences. I think for Americans, this is quite a sexy word, but for English people and Australians, it is not a sexy word.
No, it's like a word you use for children, like don't be naughty.
Yeah, I have heard this always in children contexts, like with little kids.
Yeah.
And I don't think no matter how long I'm here, will I ever get comfortable with listening to adults tell little children about how naughty they're being. It's like, oh God, it's just.
I just don't think of the word naughty like you do.
I know you don't, but it is always unsettling to me.
All right.
Maybe it's just me, but I feel like this is an American thing. I might be wrong about this, though.
All right. I can see you on the video still.
I'm looking right at you right now. Or have we started? Don't make kissy faces. Don't make kissy faces.
You love it.
No,
sorry, I'm being naughty.
Now I'm minimizing you. Last time we were discussing a friend of yours who, rather than fly on an airplane, took cargo ships across the ocean out of some environmental consciousness. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And I started to have a little bit of a rant about how this stuff drives me crazy because of how terrible cargo ships are in terms of carbon dioxide emissions.
Yeah.
And
I didn't give that to you, by the way. I did say I wasn't sure you were right.
Oh, yeah.
I still don't think you're right.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those things. There was a big discussion on our subreddit about it, and people arguing back and forth about various things. And I spent a good while today trying to pull up some actual numbers. Yeah. I was on like EPA.gov, and I'm pulling up. I have in front of me this ridiculous. It's like a 71-page document from the EPA about the carbon dioxide emissions of everything. And it's like, oh boy, surely this will help me. No, it doesn't help me. I was looking through it, can't find what I'm looking for. Every chart is either not detailed enough or too detailed to be completely unhelpful. It was very frustrating because I was just trying to find an answer to this question about the relative pollution of these various things.
Yeah.
And so here's what people were discussing in the Reddit, which is as clear as it gets, that if you are measuring carbon dioxide emission per distance ton of cargo shipped, gigantic cargo ships are very efficient and aircraft are very not efficient.
Yeah. Otherwise, they'd ship cars all around the world in planes, wouldn't they?
Exactly. This was never really the question.
Right.
Well, of course, if you're going to have to ship a whole bunch of cargo around, you probably don't want to be shipping very heavy things in aircraft. Even just carbon dioxide emissions aside, it's not going to make any economic sense.
Yeah.
And so most of the arguments that I saw from people were based upon these numbers, talking about tonnage of raw materials moving back and forth. But my argument is that people are not the same thing as boxes of steel.
That's unusual for you to make that argument.
Well, I'll pass on what I was about to say there.
People are not boxes of steel yet.
Yeah. We might get to that actually later. But so people are saying, oh, everyone should be using cargo ships to travel across the oceans.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, then this is a massive infrastructure change, because I was also looking up the travel times, and it seems like the fastest just about any cargo ship can cross the Atlantic if they're going full steam is 5 days. And it looked like the majority of ships were taking 10 or 20 days to get across the ocean. And I presume that that's a bit like when you're in a car that going at a lower speed is more fuel efficient. I don't think it's probably an actual speed limitation. I think they're going slower for fuel. Now, if you start talking about you want to move an enormous number of people across the ocean, well, now you also have to provide those people with food. There needs to be places for them to sleep. There needs to be some minimal amount of entertainment, unless you want this to be like a slave ship and they're all just down in the hole.
Rowing.
Yeah, rowing. That'd be really carbon efficient. So when people start arguing about everybody, like people should take cargo ships, this is the thing that drives me crazy. It's like, okay, yes, for your friend who is such an infinitesimal amount of the ship that is moving, we can consider him to be cargo. But there's no plane that's not flying because he's taking the ship. And if everybody were to take ships, you know what we'd have to do? We'd have to make them more like cruise ships. And the environmental numbers on the cruise ships are undeniably awful.
But cruise ships are a bit sort of also meandering and purposeless.
Oh, yeah. What I'm saying is...
I can't believe that it wouldn't work out cheaper to stay nearer the ground. Just like, isn't it like basic physics, you know, work and all this sort of stuff? If you have to lift something thousands and thousands of feet into the air, although I guess there's less friction up there once you do that. But
my frustration with this is that the only consideration is not the amount of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. There are, if this is your concern, if you are a person who is saying, oh, I'm really concerned about the amount of carbon dioxide being released into the atmosphere. It's like, okay, great. I do have a pie chart for you, which talks about global CO2 gas emissions by source. The entire transportation industry, which includes all of the cargo ships, is 13% of the global CO2 emissions. Right? And then this is the thing I was trying to break down further, but more than half of that 13% is from automobiles. So you're talking at most, if the entire rest of that wedge is nothing but cargo ships, at most, it's like 6%. That's the ceiling for cargo ships in the water and CO2 emissions. And this is it's like people focus on things that they can see that are obvious, and they don't focus on things that they can't see.
Well, they also focus on things they can do. This is the age-old argument, isn't it, about, you know, should I recycle? I'm just one human out of all these billions, and me recycling's not going to make a difference to anything, so I'm not going to bother recycling. And if everyone does that, then nothing gets recycled. Like, you can only do what you can do. You can only choose to go on a plane or a boat because that's all I've got the power over. I can only decide my actions. And I can't base that just on, I'm just such a small part of the pie chart. Otherwise, no one does anything.
If CO2 is a problem, you attack it from the biggest problem downward. The effect is much, much better spent if you are looking at energy supply, which is 26% of CO2 emissions. That's where more than a quarter of CO2 comes from. And then industrial uses is 20%, and then agriculture is 14%. These are the places where it can actually have an effect.
But Gray, don't these small grassroots campaigns sometimes lead to those bigger things? I know this is a bit of a long bow, and I don't think this is necessarily what's going to happen. But if everyone in the world suddenly said, you know what, I'm not going on planes anymore, I'm going on boats because I think it's better for the environment, all the politicians will start saying, bloody hell, the people of the world really care about carbon dioxide all of a sudden. Maybe we should introduce more and more policies to do with this because they'll keep voting for us, and then they'll start doing things to do with those bigger issues like power and agriculture. And so I think saying, let's not do something small because we need to attack the big problem first isn't necessarily true. Sometimes these little minor skirmishes can snowball into bigger things.
The thing with that is, what is your chance of having an effective small-scale thing snowball into a larger thing?
Right.
This is the same argument of, is your action, does it have any potential to be effective? And my answer of taking a cargo ship instead of a flight is, no, you have 0% chance of having any significant impact on the global transportation CO2 emissions.
Unless you're the president of the United States, that's pretty much the case for every single action every single human on Earth takes. Like, no one person can do anything on Earth. And if every single individual says that, then nothing gets done at all by anyone. because we're all pointless.
You have to organize into effective groups. What I get frustrated by is a certain kind of behavior that I see where people want to demonstrate to others their values. Like I feel like this is a kind of human signaling behavior where you want to take a highly visible but almost completely ineffectual action that demonstrates to others what kind of person you are. This is a seductive thing to do because you get positive reinforcement from your peers. Oh, look at you. You care about the environment. What a good person you are. You get this positive reinforcement. And then what I think is worse is that you feel like you've done something, but you have effectively done nothing, right? You have actually helped nobody. You haven't started a campaign. You haven't prevented a single airplane from not flying once. Nothing has occurred. I don't know. I think a lot of online activities can sometimes be like this, where people just want to signal what side they're on and what great people they are in a way that causes no effective change. And I think that's worse than doing nothing, because you end up feeling like you have done something and you've accomplished nothing at all. I think that mental state is worse.
Okay.
What are you thinking over there, Brady?
Well, if it makes you feel better about yourself, that can be good. But
that's a whole different thing, though. That's not what people think they're doing.
All right. Well, okay.
Your friend doesn't take that cargo ship because he thinks, you know what? I will be completely ineffective in helping the environment, but I'll feel better about myself. If he was that honest with his motives, then they're like, you know what, dude? That's awesome. You go ahead and take that cargo ship.
Yeah, well, everything starts with a small step. If everyone had your attitude, then they wouldn't pick up their rubbish. If I dropped a piece of paper on the ground, I'd say, well, I'm not going to pick that up and put it in the bin, because it's just one piece of rubbish. One piece of paper on the ground's not going to make the whole world messy, so what does my one piece of paper matter? So everyone doing something does count. Where there is a problem, and where the point you make has some strength, is if all these people doing these little meaningless actions don't do other actions as a result of it, because they think they've done their bit, and they don't do the things that do matter. I guess the question I have for you is, if I care about carbon dioxide emissions really strongly, what do you suggest I do as just Joe Citizen?
You have to seriously think about how much you actually care about this topic. And then if you are going to genuinely try to move toward a solution, and for a problem that's on the scale of something like CO2 emissions in the world, that means you're going to have to join an organization which is working toward your goals, because you have no ability as a human to affect this as a single person. That's just the out of the gate assumption. Nothing you do will affect this on a significant level one way or the other. Let's say you take everything you own and you set it on fire because you hate the environment. Well, guess what? Your CO2 emissions don't matter. And let's say you love the environment, that you do the best thing you could possibly do for Mother Earth, which is to kill yourself and to not use up any more resources ever again. Either one of those two extremes, you have affected nothing as a human. It doesn't matter if you kill yourself.
For the record, we're not advocating that course of action, by the way.
Well, but that is always the reducto ad absurdum of a lot of these arguments of, oh, you should use less and less and less. It's like, well, yeah, the ultimate way that you can help Mother Earth is to not partake in her resources and to just remove yourself, shuffle off that mortal coil.
Yeah.
Right. But so my point is, at the extreme ends, you as an individual have no effect. So the real question is, do you care enough about this topic to actually give up non-trivial amounts of your time and your effort to join forces with other people and create a group that has a potential of affecting the actual outcome?
Or give them your money.
Giving them money is also good. But I think if you are not crossing that boundary, you just want to think you're the kind of person who cares about this without actually having to pay a lot of costs in terms of time or in terms of money.